Greetings and welcome, everyone. Welcome to this evening's episode of Real Talk with ZSJ. As you all know, this is Real Talk Uncensored. I'm excited to be here with you all on this New Year's Eve. I'm glad to have some folks joining us for some conversation on this New Year's Eve around Black feminism and Africana Womanism. And I have to say, I have to hold the excitement that I have right now because this beautiful sister, Dr. Clenora Hudson-Weems, is joining me tonight. This is actually my first time, you guys, meeting her, like seeing her in the flesh. Like I've read her, like I had to find her work, and it really it helped me come out of a dark place, quite honestly. As a university student, I attended Wright University for some time, and I took a women and gender studies class. And of course, I was introduced to feminism as the only way, right? And I remember sitting in that class and really giving my professor a hard time. The professor happened to be a white woman. And I think I'm pretty sure, I gave her a hard time because I couldn't connect. I just could not connect with the framing that they used about Black men in particular.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of that, unfortunately, on social media. It's actually a really toxic kind of environment. So I just kind of wanted to set that up and give everybody this background. And Dr. Tareen Wright is actually going to be joining us as well. So I'm excited about that. She is coming in. She's having an issue with her camera, but she is going to be joining us. So this is going to be a very, very robust conversation. And I'm actually really excited to have so many of you all joining us right now to have this conversation. And let me just be quiet and allow Dr. Clenora Hudson-Weems, the architect of Africana Womanism, to share a little bit more about who you are. I know you are a professor or professor emeritus from Missouri State University. Anyway, you introduce yourself to our audience.
Right. Let me give you some accuracy. I'm not Professor Emerita. I am Professor Active. I'm still teaching at the University of Missouri Columbia. I'm not retired.
Wonderful.
I've been here for quite some time. I've hooded many PhDs. Some of my students have gone on to get masters and PhDs too, as well as MDs and JDs, etc. So, and of course, I even mentor students who are not here. I have a very active student at Auburn University in Alabama. We talk every week, but she's in the English department at Auburn University in Auburn. I think it's Auburn, Alabama. And she's a wonderful, wonderful person. She found me some kind of way. I know what it was. One of the, my latest book called Africana Womanism, Reclaiming Ourselves, 5th edition. How about that? This book came out, Africana Womanism, Reclaiming Ourselves, not 5th edition. The first edition was in 1997. 1993.
Really quickly, how can we get that book? Where can we purchase it?
Oh, you can get it online. You can go online, or you can go to Rutledge. It's a Rutledge Press.
Okay, Rutledge Press
out of London and New York, and Rutledge. And you can also get it on Amazon. In fact, Amazon has a page of just my books.
Okay.
So, and they went all the way. They got this, and they got a African Womanism Wikipedia, Clenora Hudson-Weems Wikipedia. It's all there for you.
Okay.
But at any rate, it was quite interesting. This whole thing with Africana Womanism is something that I actually started in the 80s. I was in grad school working on my doctorate at University of Iowa. I was a National Ford Fellow. And I actually wanted to deal with both sides of the coin. I hadn't planned initially on doing a two-sided human coin thing, but I have a compassion for my people, wherever we are. And I don't care if you're a man, or a woman, we're in it together. I wrote a
That's
poem
it.
on that. Did you see that poem?
Recently?
I mean, have you heard of the poem?
I have not. You want to recite it?
Yeah, because I think if I recite this, then you'll catch up with me. Everybody be right there with me. I'm going to
Please.
talk about the 18 characteristics of African womanism. You heard of those, of course. But I want to just show you the poem that I wrote. Actually, I was en route for a speaking engagement at the first national Africana Womanism conference or summit, or I guess you call it symposium or whatever, in Pittsburgh. I had spoken at University of Pittsburgh at a banquet on Africana Womanism, and this gentleman and his wife wanted to host the first national, because I'd spoken in and out of the country, especially at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka in 1992, right before this book came out, a year before. University of Nigeria in Nsukka, and I'd spoken, of course. They had the first international African Womanism conference at the University of Zimbabwe in what was it, in 2010. But at any rate, this was in 2009. This is just before I left the following year for Zimbabwe. But I was at an airport. I think I was in Wisconsin, changing flights, going to Pittsburgh. And I had a 2-hour layover. And of course, I took my pen out and I wrote this poem called Africana Melanated Womanism, I Got Your Back, Boo. Now, my students love it. They love it. I read the first 3 lines and they go, I got your back, boo. Hi, how are you? There you are.
I'm fine.
I was just telling you,
Welcome.
I'm going to bring everybody up to date with
Hold on, it's still not right, the sound.
I can hear you, but go
Okay.
ahead. She's going to read her poem. But welcome in,
Okay.
Dr. Tyreen Wright. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
I had to resort.
Mhm.
I had to resort to my phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well.
Okay, the sound is really bad on my end because
Oh.
something is going on with with both of my computers. So
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, anyway, while you're doing that, you can read the
Hold
poem on
on.
your own whenever you want to. You can read the poem on your own. But at any rate, it's called I Got Your Back, Boo. And it's very accurate. It deals with the prioritization of race, class, and gender. You'll see them represented right there. See, because I tell people, feminism in its original state was female exclusivity. We know that. We all know that. That has no relevancy to my life. Female exclusivity, how can it be? When I got a daddy, I had a husband, I have cousins, brothers, all that, and they are men, and they are not on the outside of my life; they are inside.
That's right.
And I love them. So I'm not anti-male. I love men. I remember going to a conference at the. It was actually they held that conference at the. It was at Spelman College. Now, of course, I went. This National Women's Studies Association conference.
Please tell us about that. I'm sure that was interesting.
Oh, it was a riot. It really. Let me tell you, actually, I had been introduced to that a few years before because they had a summer. They have a conference every year, right? Let me just get down to the nitty gritty. Back to Spelman. That's the main thing. I had seen the women at the conference at the university, at Ohio State University. I was a CIC intern. I remember the lady when I walked over there to the table when I got to the gym where they had the all the bookmarks set up and everything, and so I was excited and I went over. I saw this tall black woman, and she was she said, "Are you on my mailing list?" I said, "I don't think so." And so I started writing my name and I got as far as Clenora. She said, "You're Clenora Hudson-Weems." I was married to a Withers before. That husband is deceased, and then I got married later on to a Weems, so I'm Hudson-Weems. But at any rate, that's life. Anyway, so what happened is, and she said, I want you to sign. I started signing this thing, and then I realized that we were not on the same page. So I just excused myself. I'm just polite. We're not on the same page. There's no need in my trying to convince you. I only, share who I am and what I believe in.
I have found, I'll tell you, Dr. Weems, Dr. Clenora Hudson-Weems, I have found those spaces to be so toxic.
Very toxic.
the feminism, even some streams of Black feminism. I certainly know of some Black feminists who are married to Black men and they love men as well. But the overwhelming majority of the feminism that I see exercised on social media and
anti-male.
It's extremely anti-Black male in particular.
Oh, that's what I was about to tell you. This lady at the university, she was at the conference, National Women's Studies Association, and so she was saying, well, I was actually the in charge of the Black. What's that? I was in charge of the Black caucus. Black women caucus. When we had a task force, I was over that. And I told them, I said, ladies, I said, make sure you come here tomorrow. People always think that we're going to be not on time, but in time and be late. It's 7 o'clock, which is before the conference. Be here so that we can vote, so that we can look at them and see how they're voting, because people like to secretly vote against you. Look at each one of them. All our heads will turn around when they get ready to vote for us. I want to be voted in. Okay, since we're here. But this one white woman told me, she said, Clenora, she said, we're not opposed to Black women. It's those damn Black men. I said, excuse me. You really don't know me. You don't know me, do you? No, you don't. Because those damn Black men you're talking about, one of them is my daddy. Another is my husband. Another is my brothers. I have 3 brothers. I have cousins. I have colleagues. I have buddies. Oh, no, you don't know me. Because you just can't dismiss my men as those damn Black men. I'm not gonna have it. I'm not the one. That's all. So I walked off. Go on.
I'm going to ask you really quickly. I have said similar things, although I'm not in the academy. I work in the nonprofit world, and before this current role that I am in, I was in a very liberal nonprofit space, and we're actually working to end the school to prison pipeline, which is very focused on Black children, but Black male children in particular. And it got to a point where you couldn't even talk about the actual facts that even in kindergarten and preschool, Black male children make up the most of the subgroup of students who are being excluded from school, suspended and expelled. And I should pull back a little bit and just share a little bit about myself, is that I actually got into the work through my own experience with my own son. So I'm a mother.
There you go. Where do you live, by the way? Where are you from? Where are you now?
I live in the DC region right now, but I lived in Ohio at the time when I first started my advocacy work. But I worked for a national organization. And I have to tell you, some of these conferences, it was very toxic. You couldn't talk about the truth. You couldn't say the truth about what was happening to our children. Black male.
My thing is, I can talk about it because I just bogart. Since I'm here, I have a right to say what I want to say. Okay. And I'm going to do it. I remember, but anyway, after I got past that, I was through with that. I was invited to speak. That's why I was there. They asked me to set up a panel. Well, I set up a panel the way, I like a panel. It's my panel, right? So the lady said, you know what? She said, the next year I was invited again to the University of Minnesota. And I keep getting this question. So, Clenora, you always have wonderful sessions. People love you. And I mean, it's always standing room only. I said, I know. And I love it, too, because I can feel it. I feel they're with me. You feel it? You feel me? They feel me. OK. And so I said, she said, but I just don't understand why you always have to have a male on your panel. I said, excuse me? Did you just say my panel?
Wow.
My panel looks like I want it to be. That's my panel. I set it up. I can't imagine life without a male, and males may as well can't imagine life without females, because that's the way it continues. Men and women together. That's it. That's the way God has already said it. We can't change it. I remember seeing it on the Phil Donahue show. One of my girlfriends was the executive. No, she was the senior producer of the Phil Donahue show for 20 years. And it was so funny. The ladies were they were on there, they hadn't seen their babies in years, because they had abandoned their homes. You read the Feminist Mystique, they got tired of household drudgery and what's the name, Sylvia Ann Hewlett said, feeble-minded chores of 8-year-olds. And of course, you have Betty Friedan talking about she wants something more than a home and a children and another. I say, I want that too. I want all of it. I want my home. I want my children. I want my man. I want it all. That's it. But at any rate, the ladies had left their families, and so they're talking to Phil Donahue show, and then all of a sudden their little kids come, little grandkids. Their kids are grown, and why did you leave us? I thought about you all the time, and I love you, but why did you leave us? We were just kids in grade school. I had to find my own space, and I had to find my own career. But I loved you. They said, So they kept on talking, and somebody said, well, you know what? If you just have to have children, you can always go to the sperm bank. I said, hello, can you please tell me where the sperm comes from that's in the sperm bank? You know, it's already fixed, cut, cast in bronze. It's male-female interaction. That's the way it happens. Otherwise, you can fix it up however you want to fix it up, but unless there's some type of interaction, whether it's in the bedroom or in the sperm bank, right? It's a male-female. It's they're coming together, the sperm and the egg. Period. Right. And then there was this woman on TV. This is back in the 90s, and she was a physician, and she says we've almost gotten there where we can actually take 2 eggs and create an offspring. I said, please, excuse me, whatever that is you just created, keep it away from me because I'm afraid of it. I am afraid of it. It is not human.
Yeah. It is not human. Can you imagine where we are with this kind of technology today?
Wait a minute, they're doing everything. But see, this scares me. I said, no, that's not real. And at some point, it's going to explode. I can tell you that. But my thing is, I'll always be on the right side because I know it's not godlike. I don't want it. That thing, I don't know what it is, how long it's going to last, any of that. You know, so just keep me away from it. Keep me away from it. So at any rate,
as Dr. Amos Wilson says, everything is political. And I have to ask you, because I know that in the nonprofit space, there is repercussions to Black women like me who don't identify as Black feminists. Your funding can get cut. You're not invited to, certain highfalutin events and things like that. What are your thoughts around that? Because I think it's very interesting that certain women are constantly lifted up who haven't done nearly as much work as you have in your career. I won't name any names, but they're very popular on Twitter. They're very popular among white feminists, certainly, because they have a very peculiar and anti-Black male view, and they're lifted up and given all kind of fellowships, all kind of money that you see them on MSNBC, you see them on all these different platforms. And I had to really dig to find your work, Dr. Valethia Watkins' work. I had to dig to find it for myself to even have some ammunition to fight back against these people, because they're very, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, even to Black women like me, not just to men, but even Black women who, who don't identify necessarily as a Black feminist, you can lose a lot. Have you experienced any of that in your career?
Most definitely. But I tell you what, I look in the mirror and I see Clenora every time. I don't care. Not only that, I disinvite myself. I have turned down invitations to speak at Oxford University several times. University of London. I mean, I got a recent one at Oxford, another outfit. I personally am not interested. I've been invited a lot of times to speak in places like Brazil, and I do communicate with those people. In fact, I just got another email this morning, a couple of emails, one last night, one this morning, because I can relate to these people who are genuinely interested. I'm not interested in people who want to invite me just to pick me and either take my stuff like they've done with Africana Womanism. Some of that stuff is nothing but that comes up other than feminism. It's really feminism that has kicked off parts of Africana Womanism.
Like Alice Walker's womanism. Yeah. But let me bring in Dr.
Alice Walker has already defined what womanism. Alice Walker is not a theorist. I can't understand why people have made her a theorist. Alice Walker was happy being a poet and a novelist and an essayist. That's it.
Yes, ma'am.
In Search of Our Mother's Garden, she has just maybe a couple of sentences in which she defines the womanist. And all of a sudden, whoa, that's what it is, But it takes Malefe Asante. I read to Dr. Wright earlier today what Malefe said in in the afterword to my book, and people say, "Well, why do you have a man to write your afterword?" I said, "Excuse me, that's my book.
Right.
I had the first, second, third word. If I want him to have the last word, so be it. It's my book." Okay.
Yeah, I
If
love
you
Dr.
don't want,
Malefia's
if you don't want
work
the
as
voice
well.
of the male in your world, then you write your book, but you can't write mine. My
Yes,
books
ma'am.
always have men in them. I'm sorry. We're in
That's
it together.
right.
Which means I need to read this poem right quick so you can get it. It gives you the gist of who I am because it prioritizes race, class, and gender. Okay. It's not gender exclusivity. It's not anti-male. It goes like this. Don't you know by now, girl, we're all in it together. Family centrality. That's it. We're going nowhere without the other. That means the men, the women, and the children too. Truly collectively working, I got your back, boo. Racism means the violation of our constitutional rights, which can create ongoing legal and even physical fights. This first priority for humankind is doing what it must do. Echoing our First Lady Michelle, I got your back, boo. You see how long I wrote it. This is in not 2009. Classism is the hoarding of financial privileges. Privileges we must all have now in pursuit of happiness. Without a piece of the financial pie, we're doomed to have a coup. Remember, each must protect the other. I got your back, boo. Sexism, the final abominable sin of female subjugation, is battle we must wage right now to restore our family relations. All forms of sin inevitably fall under one of these three offenses. Africana Womanism, I got your back, boo, corrects our common senses.
Thank you.
That's exactly what it is about. It's about race, class, and gender. We are women, of course.
Can I just say I want to thank you for including class, because that's actually another one of the hiccups, in my opinion, about Black feminism is that like you said, it literally focuses on gender exclusively, and it doesn't. When as an organizer, I organize Black parents, primarily Black women and Black poor women, Black working class women. We would go to these conferences and they would be talking about stuff that they're not even interested in. They don't even know what they're talking about. They're not even connected to their experiences in the hood. You understand what I'm saying? And that to me, I'm like, well, where's the class conversation? How are we talking about how economic depravity is specifically impacting the masses of Black folks?
Exactly.
Let's be honest about that. The masses.
Take care of your family. Yes, yes.
That's right. I want to bring in Dr. Tyreen Wright. She joined us a little bit late. Sister, thank you so much. It was you and I actually that got this conversation started on social media because
that's right. You're very welcome. Sorry for my technical issues.
It's okay. Introduce yourself.
Okay,
please.
So I'm Dr. Tyreen Wright, and well, you have my bio, but I'm a author. I'm the author of Booker T. Washington in Africa. I teach for the City University of New York. I'm currently the associate editor of the Journal of Pan-African Studies, and on and on. But thank you, one, for inviting me.
And thank you for connecting me to Dr. Weems. This is beautiful.
Yes, because I felt like, sure, I can get on here and I can talk about the tenets of Africana Womanism, which I think we need to, discuss those in literal terms. However, I think in terms of, Sister Zakia, how this conversation began, and it's very important for us to inform younger women that
this is what it's about.
Right. That there is, you don't have to say that you represent or stand for women's rights and women's human rights. You don't have to say you're a feminist.
No.
Okay. You don't have to. And the landscape is much greater, and the historical landscape reaches much further back than this idea of feminism promoted by white women. I always say, and I've said this in the context of a space where there were other women other than African women. I always said the mother does not sit at the daughter's knee. And calling yourself a feminist is sitting at the knee of your daughter. Okay. The mother doesn't have to sit at the daughter's knee. Okay. That's it.
You know what I called it? You know what I called it?
Uh-huh.
I said when black women name themselves after white women, the feminists, because we were their blueprint.
Right, of course.
When they looked at us and said, "Oh,
right." We are
they're working women. I want to move from the home place to workplace. We were always there.
we are their mothers on this earth and in this struggle.
Exactly.
On this earth and in this struggle.
We were the blueprint. Oh, look
Right.
at them. They're very vocal. I want to find voice and break silence. I said, we never had the silent ones unless they just, whatever. I said, but the thing about it is when you do that, what does I say in the first book in 1993? I said, what you're doing essentially is duplicating a duplicate, which is problematic. Really problematic in the academy. We're supposed to be smart,
Right.
And you don't understand that you are duplicating a duplicate? Right. Why don't you get the real deal?
Right. And not simply
and continue that. And continue that.
Not just in the academy, but in real terms. I see
exactly
Black women, African women, Africana women, my age and younger, who are calling themselves feminists. But when you press them on the word or press them on the definition, they're not quite sure
about what it means. Or give them the venomous beginning of feminism.
Right. Or what it invokes. And that's what's problematic. When I was, I put some notes together for this, and we probably are going to do this all impromptu and not even with notes. But the point is that one of the interesting things that stood out, because this comes up a lot when you start to talk about oppression, who's oppressed, what their ability to do with oppression or against oppression. And one of the things that arose in the context of the feminist movement when Black women are challenging the racist ideologies that exist amongst feminists, white women retorted that the oppressed can't oppress. And don't get me wrong, we hear that in other spaces, and we check that too, because we hear that sometimes with our men. Okay, we're oppressed, we don't oppress. Okay, listen, we'll check all of it, and Black women, African women are in the right position to check all of it, because we, even during slavery, we were the oppressed of the oppressed, right? Okay, so the reality is this. All of us have some measure of power, okay? Even if it's not any power outside of your own home. Most of us have some measure of power. And the question and the issue for white women in particular is that when they seize power, they have no ideological position, line, philosophy that says they will not use that power oppressively. Okay, so when you think that you are working with them, Black women who call themselves feminists, when you think you are working with them, you should beware that once they seize the power that they want, they're going to hit you over the head with it, because there's nothing in their philosophy that fundamentally says that you cannot act as the oppressor. So in those instances, then what do you do? Okay. And that's part of the reality, the contradictions that exist. And so I think in our younger sisters saying that they reject domination in a patriarchal society, they also are aligning themselves with something that is very similar. The only issue white women have in this society is that they're oppressed by white men, and that they're not part of the oppressive class. Okay. And
but they are part of the oppressive class.
No, listen, they are part of the oppressive class, but they have limited power. And so really what this is a power struggle between white men and white women and white men.
And they are leveraging Black women in their struggle.
I'm not supposed to be oppressed. I'm supposed to be on the throne with you, oppressing everyone else.
Let me just
and that is one of the key issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what I want to do? And when you said that, I just chuckled, honey. Back in the 80s, late 80s, I remember going to the conference at the university. That was actually in Boston, National Council of Black Studies. And I set up a panel again. And I had a male on my panel. And I said, let me tell you one thing. You can call it anything, but don't call me a feminist, because I'm not that.
Right.
I'm going to create, at that time I was saying Black womanism, and I decided I wanted to go beyond that. I wanted to, relate it to, have a home base there, Africa. Right. But it was so funny. When I got there, I'm like, I don't understand why everybody is trying to pretend that just because you're dealing with white women or women that you're safe. You're not safe.
No, not at all.
What was so interesting is that I wrote this article It came out in the late 80s. You may have seen it. It's called Cultural and Agenda Conflicts in Academia, Critical Issues of African Women's Studies. It's in my books usually, and I have 4 books out now on African womanism. And the second one, the sequel, is Africana Woman's Literary Theory. And I even dealt with that thing with Barack Obama at the time that he was running for president of U.S. At any rate, I said here, and this was Aptheker, by the way, Herbert Aptheker's daughter. Aptheker was historian at Harvard. At Harvard. And he did a lot of research on slave insurrection. So, of course, in his home, he talked about racism as being a bad thing and, dealing with, people like, Nat Turner, etc. Was sensitive and felt something. Well, his daughter, Bettina Aptheker, had some of those inclinations. And she says here, and this is really interesting, she says women's studies programs, and that's what you were saying when you the courses that you took at Ohio. Okay, here it is. Women's studies programs operate within a racist structure. Okay, which is why I would never. I've had job offers, share Black studies, joint with women studies and Black studies. That's a no. It's not, or English and women's studies. No. It will not be. If you want me here in those 2 departments together, then you don't want me.
Mm-hmm.
I can be in English and be all whatever I want to be, and in Black studies or African studies, but not women and gender studies, because gender studies and women's studies is synonymous with things that I'm not even interested in. But at any rate, she says here, every department in every predominantly white institution is centered on the experience, history, politics, and culture of white men, usually of the elite. What is significant, however, is that women's studies, by its very reason for existence, its raison d'etre, implies a reordering of politics, a commitment to community, and an educational purpose which is inherently subversive of its institutional setting. Insofar as women's studies replicates, duplicates, imitates, all those takes a racial pattern in which white rule predominates, however.
That's right.
It violates its own so-called of origin and first purpose. It's no such thing.
It's absolutely true.
Stop trying to pretend that you're so. And then Toni Morrison. Oh yes, Toni Morrison does it real well. I quoted her in a chapter that I did for my book. Actually, the sequel to this book, which was a reprint of the 1993 classic. Rutgers Press.
Thank you for holding that up, because we have lots of people in the chat.
It's Africana Womanism, but it's the 5th edition. It has 5 chapters from Africana Womanism, Africana Melanated Womanism. But I'm going to ask you this. If I do this here, and I will immediately click it off if it blocks you. But this chapter is the opening chapter of this special book that I have, which is called Africana Melanated Womanism, Men, Women, and Children in it together. Did that block you? Can you still see just what you've been seeing?
I can still see you.
Okay,
yeah, we can still see you.
Well, let me read to you. Let me just.
Do you want to share your screen?
That would be nice.
Just click the bottom. It should be something on the bottom of the screen.
I was looking for that because I do this
for class,
my class,
right?
But I don't see that bar down there that I usually see. And that's
it's down there. This is go back. You got to go back to it and look. But I wanted to also share.
It might be. Wait a minute. It may come up now. This screen would be really nice. Oh, let's see. Well, I see it. There it is. Share screen.
I told you.
I'll press the share screen, and then I'll share screen.
All right, I'm looking for it. We got a couple of questions in the chat. I want to ask you all once we look at this.
Yeah. Let's see.
Did you already hit it?
Yeah, I hit the share screen. And usually mine does something a little different. You're in the show. Everyone can see and hear you. Okay, that's good. But now I just want to share my screen.
Do you want to just read it to us, Dr. Weems?
Yeah, I'll just read it to you. That's what I'll do. Okay. Now, listen to this. It's called The Need for a Definitive Africana Womanism Paradigm and the Question of Interconnectedness versus intersectionality, which I get so tired of hearing that terminology.
Oh, that's
And we
the
need
way.
and we need to
That's the
talk about
way.
We're gonna talk about
we need to talk about
We
that too.
need. Please talk about
Well,
it.
we're gonna talk
Please.
about that too. But let me start off with part two. Part two is just a two-part chapter, the opening chapter for this book. It says, and this is a quote from Toni Morrison, by the way, you guys. And you know, I co-authored the first book on Toni Morrison, as you well know, that came out in 1990, just a few months before I came to Mizzou. But at any rate, this is Toni Morrison in 1971, New York Times Magazine. She says, quote, the early image of women's lib was of an elitist organization made up of upper middle class women, meaning white women, with the concerns of that class and not paying much attention to the problems of most Black women. She says too much emphasis is placed on gender politics.
It's still that way.
If you're talking, of course, and she was just saying that back in the 90s. So if you're talking about gender exclusivity, you know perfectly well that what we want to talk about is racism is nowhere on the table. You
It
see,
sure isn't.
that's why, and I take it back actually to 1870, when the 15th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, giving Black men the right to vote. Okay, this is interesting because what is it? Will allow? Okay, I will allow. What is I'm trying to allow and get it out the way? I can't see your face because this thing has.
We can see you.
Okay, I've started something. I hate that. But at any rate, let me just say this here. What happened is, what was I saying? I was talking about, oh God, this screen just distracted me. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But
we can actually get to some of the questions if you all don't mind. There's a lot of questions in the chat from our listeners. We have
men love Africana Womanism too.
There's lots of men who got some questions for you.
Yeah, because they know who I am. I remember
the
inauguration with the first one with Barack, and my book had just come out, and it was like, wow, it had a reception at the embassy, the Kenyan embassy, which is where Barack is from, and it was like massive. But at any rate, the next day I spoke at Howard University.
Okay.
And so I had two engagements that morning and that afternoon. So that morning I spoke, it was great. Everybody was happy and all that. That afternoon, the guy comes in, this tall, handsome guy, thin, lovely guy, chocolate. He comes in, but he's all huffy puffy. And I'm like, what's wrong with him? But anyway, I'm still talking to people on the side as before the thing opened up. And so finally, he sat down, he was very annoyed. And then he said something to me. I said, do you know who I am? And he said, no, ma'am, but I know we're used to this. They're bringing in women to isolate them from Black men all the time. We're, trash like that. I said, then of course you don't know me. I said, why don't you just sit down and chill and let's see where you are in the end. I hadn't talked 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and this man had tears in his eyes. He said, and after when he opened up, he said, I had no idea. I came here ready to fight because I thought you all were going to further talk Black women against us. And Black men are not opposed to Black women. We want our women. A lot of us, that's what we want. But we get trashed, all the time instead of correcting. I said, that's what you need to be. I said, because we are in it together, friends. That's what we need to be. I talked to the women and the men at Cornell University. They changed their minds. One lady who was working on her PhD, for example, in engineering. And she said, my boyfriend is in law school at Columbia University, New York. I said, oh, wow. I said, so when do you graduate? She said, next month. She was getting her PhD. I said, so where are you going? She said, well, I don't know. I haven't really decided. And I don't want to just go to New York because you know what that means. People are going to assume that I'm just following him. I said, excuse me, do you know anybody in New York? She says, no, except him. I said, but then in fact, you would be following him, wouldn't you? She said, well, I guess so. I said, is there something wrong with that? I said, do you have a position elsewhere that you're contemplating and makes it problematic for you to decide? She says, no. I said, then why aren't you? I said, no. Can that question. Don't go to New York and let him stay in there and go on to law school and call me in a couple of years and tell me where he is and where you are. I bet you won't be in the same place.
Wow.
But let's
so there you go. Okay. And the same thing, I went to speak as I left Cornell University I had spoken at the University of, at Bryn Mawr. And then this is
Oh, okay. Where
the
is that?
worst month at all. That's in Pennsylvania,
Oh,
Philadelphia.
that's right. I heard of it.
And worst weather, but they were there. I couldn't believe the people were there, you know. And one lady said, my best friend, she's white, she's not here tonight, but she happens to be Black. She said, but every time we take women's studies courses, every time we want to talk about Black men, people are like, who want to talk about it? I said, then why are you there? You know, that's not your environment, which, of course, you tell me.
Part of it is, Dr. Weems, I have seen, or at least observed, is that feminism has conditioned a lot of these sisters in the university not to see Black men as natural allies, as you said, or natural, we are in this together. Well, but they are actually aligning with white women on the lines of gender only. Well, we're in this together because we're both women. And to me, living as a Black woman, I think it's absolutely ludicrous for any Black women to align with a white woman in that way and see themselves as the same. It doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. It doesn't make sense. And also, it doesn't make sense to white women, except for that thinking is useful to them. So when we think that way, it is useful to white women. Hence, every year you see this woman march that, you know, commences.
And look at what they did with the Black women that started it.
Absolutely.
Tamika Mallory.
That's right. That commenced in Washington, D.C. And every year, some sisters come back, and they come back with their feelings hurt because they are put in check by these white women. This is the thing. And this is something that in public spaces that I have consistently spoke about, because to not understand white women as active agents and custodians of white supremacy is to, one, put yourself literally in danger. Okay, literally. I was on a panel regarding, well, I won't even say what, but I was on a panel with other scholars.
And you're being used. That's the worst part of it. Who wants to be used?
That's right. And one of them implied that, you know, Black men, it's not harmful for you to be with white women. Listen, let's just be very clear. Right now, we have white women who consider themselves white, because we know that whiteness is fictitious and really pathology. But people who believe they're white, women who believe they're white, who turn everyday situations into deadly situations by calling the police and introducing the fear of death or the possibility of death into them. They are dangerous, and they are not doing that without full knowledge of what they are doing. They are weaponizing, calling the police, introducing the possibility of death for everyday interactions. And these, now, interestingly enough, the white male cop is going to show up. However, these are civilian white women who are aware of their level of
weaponizing
power,
whiteness
and they are
very
much aware of the fact that they are custodians, keepers, agents of white supremacy. And so we can never neutralize them. We can go even further back historically and look at their role as
that's actually one of the questions
of the larger society. White women owned enslaved persons.
Before you go to another question, let me just finish my statement I was about to say, because she said it well. But listen, you're a New Yorker, sweetheart.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Wright, you're a New Yorker. Miss Karen showed that right there. Miss Karen. Now everybody's talking about Miss Karen. Miss Karen is real. Okay.
Right.
And people need to understand that. But we were used. I tell people, that's the thing that really pisses me off. When you use me to boost up your numbers, that's what they're doing. Right. They're not interested in your agenda. And I was talking earlier about the 15th Amendment to the Constitution. Let me just finish that.
Right.
When you have white women who are part of the abolitionist movement, and so, but what they wanted, they, just like Black men and women of North and South, were relegated on the basis of race. The white women from the North, they had certain things, maybe a little more than some of the things from the South, but the bottom line is that they wanted that number to boost up. So we were invited, or they welcomed us, or they embraced us, or whatever, but they didn't want any parts of what we really wanted. And so when I look at Sojourner Truth, for example, who went to that conference all women's conference. There were a few white men there, but it's all white women's conference in Akron, Ohio in 1852.
Mm-hmm.
She is trying to go to the front to address the absurdity of female subjugation. Boy, they hissed at her, jeered, laughed, sniggered, and everything. And she went on anyway and blared it out. And she went in the order that I go in. You know, she talked about the race factor first, and then the class factor, and then they talked about women got, need to be helped over carriages and over mud ditches and over puddles, and they have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever gave me any of that. It ain't our woman. That's the class factor. Then she at the end said, and then that little man in black there says women can't have as much right because Christ wanted a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Okay, I'm saying that race, class, and gender, and now they took that and called it the Feminist Manifesto. Excuse me, race is not your concern.
Why? It never has been.
Never has been. And why are you going to take our popular and aren't our woman oration and call it the Feminist Manifesto so that you can lure more of us into thinking that, oh, we are part of that now, you know, that's it. Yeah. And so I'm like, excuse me.
So that's
when the 15th Amendment to the Constitution ratified giving black men the right to vote, black women were jubilant. They celebrated. I said they baked cookies and made Kool-Aid. Well, Kool-Aid was not a thing at that time. It was lemonade. They were happy because they knew that a vote in the black community was just that. The man was going to come home. Hey, babe, this is what we got here. Let's line it up and let's see who we're going to vote for. They were jubilant. Black, white women. Oh my God. What's her name? Carrie.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Stanton. Yes. She, baby. Oh, that thing.
Racist. Very racist. Very anti-black.
I said, I want you to listen to this.
They hated Frederick Douglass.
This woman is not playing. She says here, and it's very, very obvious. She says that we have a problem here. We have a real problem here, and we need to understand it. We cannot allow them to give white men, black men rather, the right to vote before us. She says here, and I'm quoting her.
She cut her arm off, right? She said something to that effect.
Cherry Chapman Cat. This is what she says. She has this strong position, Anglo-Saxon values and white supremacy. You know, she's talking about, preserving the vote of the white woman. She says here to these historians, there is but one way to avert the danger, cut off the vote of the slums and give it to white women. Okay. She continues, of course, that middle-class white men must recognize, what did she say? Quote, the usefulness of woman's suffrage as a counterbalance to the foreign vote and as a means of legally preserving white supremacy in the South. She called for white supremacy. So I'm saying to myself, he was annoyed. This is the toxic beginnings of feminism. So
that was the question.
If black women want to be a feminist, they need to understand where it came from.
That's where it came from.
And how people felt about you. What did they do to Sojourner Truth? They try to sit her down. Okay, so I can't imagine myself being loyal to an organization that not only did not put me on the agenda, but dismissed me even when I came without invitation, as Sojourner Truth did. You know.
Right, and just historically too, understanding that white women, listen, in terms of the institution of enslavement that lasted longer than freedom thus far, right? 250 years of enslavement in this country.
Absolutely.
We have to understand they were a large part of the slave or enslaving class of people. Over and again, as a historian, when you revisit wills, right, where black people are bequeathed from generation to generation in white families, those white women become slaveholders, okay? And you seldom hear about them freeing their enslaved persons. And I can give you, everybody tries to stereotype enslavement to the South. All of these United States, each colony adopts the institution of slavery consciously and willingly through legislation. And that being said, so they were all a part of it. And they have their women who they bequeath their enslaved persons to, and they did not free them time again. Okay. There's a famous case in New York. My first job as in the field of history at all, I was an interpreter at the St. Paul's National Historic Site in Mount Vernon, New York. And I actually created lessons from the archives there. 17th century, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. There's a famous story there of a Nathaniel and Hannah Franklin who were enslaved by the Franklin family. And I would rediscover, not discover for the first time, but rediscover that Nat Franklin had in fact fought in the Revolutionary War at 17 and would return to that same community. The narrative told by the Park Service, the National Park Service, is that the gracious Gloriana Franklin, a white woman who was the wife of one of the largest slaveholding families in Eastchester, New York, and this is the North, not even the South, right? That she graciously gave them, at the time of her death, $750 and a small homestead and some tools. But what they don't tell you, and what my rediscovery did, was give you some perspective, was that this man, this African man who had survived enslavement, gone to the American Revolutionary War and fought for their freedom, returned because he did have a relationship with a woman who would be his wife and have his children, returns instead of running away, and he remains in enslavement for 47 more years, longer than he had been alive. And at the end of his life, at 72, and his end of his wife's life, 70-something years old, Gloriana Franklin, the wife of his enslaver and his current enslaver, would give him his freedom and give him and her a homestead and $750. That's not enough, not for a lifetime, not for your freedom, not for the life of your children, not for your whole entire life and your youth and all of that. And so
not for the lives of your parents, you know.
That's right. All of them.
We can't give our kids generational wealth, because all that freedom, all that free labor that we offer them for 400 plus years, it went down. And that's why I like it when people talk about reparation, because we shouldn't pay taxes or anything, because it's been done for 400 plus years. We've already paid.
Right. And so this wealth, their labor is what this very family is built off of. This is part of one of the reasons why they are a wealthy family, because they are a large slave-holding family, enslaving family. And so my point of it is just to say that, you know, one of the things that we typically don't deal with is the fact that in certain spaces, particularly in the academy, and just in the activist
lots of activism. I was about to say,
you understand, white women have propelled themselves into the space where they are the upcoming anti-racist, and the reality is that by whose standard have you become anti-racist? Have you simply absolved yourself? But my argument is that we cannot neutralize them. The system of white supremacy has to be maintained, has to have agents, has to have actors, has to have faithful, very faithful custodians. And they are that, and they have historically been that. Okay?
And they don't want, what they don't want to do, and I spoke on this a couple of months ago. What they don't want to do is to give up white, so-called white privilege.
Of course not. No,
they're not gonna give it up. That's what Black women need to understand. They're not giving it up.
No.
But they're not giving it up power.
But listen, why would they? Why would they? Then they would have to compete with the likes of me and the likes of you all.
They are benefiting from it.
As brilliant as we are. Do you think they really want to compete with us? Why would they give it up? Their whole lives is built on white mediocrity. And so why would they want to compete with women? Go ahead.
Is more than enough to keep them enjoying it. But I challenge them. I said, you know what? I raised a question. I said, this thing called white supremacy, it sucks. And if I were a human being of any race, I wouldn't want it because it makes you lazy. You don't have
Wow.
to do anything because you're white, which means you don't have to use your brain cells. You understand? We're using our brain cells because we're creators. We've got to create space because nobody's giving us anything. We've got to create some space and some options or whatever. I said, so when you run around, hey, white supremacy, yes, I'm a white privilege. Yes, I'm that. Well, it makes you look real stupid. I said, because people like me smart. Okay, I look at you and I go, wow, you're getting all those wonderful positions. You're this and you're head of this and you're that, and you're getting paid all this money. Are you really that brilliant?
Mm-hmm.
And then I stop and say, are you just white? That's a rhetorical question. The answer is the latter. You're just white. You can be a dodo, but because you're white, you can siphon off all the information from the blacks who want to give it to you. Okay, give them. You take all the information, you process it, and you become the authority.
Right. And I don't understand how black women are not seeing that.
I am not interested in going for you to.
I don't see how they're not seeing
for you to siphon off all of my stuff and become the authority on my brain material. No, you can't. So when I talk to people like you who want to disseminate and to share it with us. I mean, you're welcome to have it, but you're not going to have it in private quarters where you be on my committee here and there, and you do this and that, and you run around. Yeah, I do all that. I don't do anything for you. I told a lady, I said, let me tell you one thing. I said, slavery ended on January 1st. January 1st, 1863. Baby, I don't do anything free. Okay? Not for you. I don't even know you. I'm gonna do this free for you. I don't think so. And you go get paid. You go get paid for all of my knowledge, and I don't get anything. They've been doing that forever. You know,
or they actually want access to your knowledge to go back and dissect it and critique it. I've seen that a lot too.
And remix it
and remix it. Yeah, that's what they actually want it for.
Remix it and give it back to you.
Like Maleficent.
Oh yeah, and then give it back to you, and then they get paid for it.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right.
They're the brains, and there you are, silence. Nobody hears you. You know, think about it. Now, let me tell you one thing.
Yeah, your work has actually been almost shadow banned. You got to really look for you.
I talked about the two-sided human coin. You know, as a Ford fellow at the University of Iowa, I finished my PhD at the University of Iowa. My doctoral dissertation title was Emmet Till, The Impetus of the Modern Civil Rights Movement, 1988, a nearly 400-page doctoral dissertation as a National Ford Fellow, the first pre-doc, because I didn't have my doctorate in 1987. I finished in 88. I was invited to DC. I was the first female pre-doc to present at a plenary. I did the opening plenary in 1987, the fall of 87, the same day that Condoleezza Rice did the afternoon plenary, and John Hope Franklin did the closing plenary. I'm a pre-doc without a PhD. I did an opening plenary. That was new.
On Emmet Till.
On Emmet
Till.
Wait a minute. And so if you look at all the so-called experts on Emmet Till, nobody wants to mention my name. But
I noticed that.
But you can't take it, honey. I was a Ford fellow. It was paid for by Ford Foundation. I was the only Ford fellow in the state of Iowa. Iowa also paid for it. They made me a Iowa fellow as well. When I graduated, I didn't even know that Saturday I had people from all over had come. And when I got to the commencement, I was the only black female getting a PhD that year in 88.
Wow.
And so when I walked in, they would say, oh, we saw you in the paper. They had 5 stories, including the cover story on me and different things that I had done, the first or whatever. I said, now, you think that all that's cast in bronze, plus the dissertation is deposited at the University of Michigan, okay? So you can't change that, okay? And when you look on my webpage, you'll see people like Sierra Lincoln at Duke University had an endowed chair there. He said that I had challenged, first of all, he said that, and this is really beautiful. He said that I had actually, done a lot with this whole thing of Emmet Till that I had. And now, first of all, before Till, I'd done a lot with Africana Womanism. He said I was unafraid to settle opinions. You hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Unafraid to settle opinions. I said, that's true on Africana Womanism. He said, and with Emmet Till, she dropped the other shoe. and challenges the most sacred shibboleths of the origins of the civil rights movement. Now, how can I challenge the most sacred shibboleths of the origins of the civil rights movement with a dissertation entitled Emmet Till, the Impetus of the Modern Civil Rights Movement, if somebody else had already done it? Nobody had done it. I was the first. He said, not everyone would want to agree with what she has to say, but few would lay the book down before she's had her say. And she says, a lot America needs to hear again right now. That's Dr. Sierra Lincoln. Because at that time, nobody wanted to hear me. And so I was kicked to the curb from 1988 all the way up until they decide later on, oh yeah, I think I'll do that. I think that makes sense. They decided to take Emmet Till as catalyst at least 15 years after I did it. Okay. Right. And then of course you have John Hope Franklin. That's not John Hope Franklin. You had John Blessingame at Yale, who said, when you really think about it, Hudson-Weems is absolutely right. We historians missed it. How many historians will say that? Okay, yeah. But that was done in early when my dissertation book was published in 1994. 1984. That's when they blurred that book. Okay, but yet you look around now. Who are the Till experts?
They have I'm sure you know they have an entire section at the new museum here in DC, the National African American Museum here in DC, that's dedicated to Emmet Till. So I imagine that. Yeah, I know that. I imagine but that they.
But you might not find me there.
No, we didn't.
Because everybody's talking. I'm the person who fought, and my dissertation committee said, Clenora, let me tell you one thing. They said, you're a Ford fellow. We're very happy. You make us proud. We want you to get this PhD. They said, but my God, why can't you just say that Emmet Till was a significant factor in the rise of the civil rights movement? I mimicked them. I looked at them. I said, because he was far more than a significant factor in the rise of the civil rights movement. He was the impetus. He was the catalyst. They said, okay, what happens if you can't defend a dissertation, Clenora? Tell us what happens then. I said, simple. I don't get a PhD, and I'm willing to take that chance. And if you are interested in my staying here, you'll go with me. They went with me. Mm-hmm. I did
that's a blessing.
I proved it, but they didn't want to hear it. So I risked a PhD for that. Okay. And the guy, for example, I can't think of his name. I don't even like to think of it, honey. I was invited to University of Utah, where I actually did the first TV exposure of Till as catalyst for midday news. That was in about 7 months later, actually, after I got the PhD for Black History Month in 1989. I flew in to the University of Utah, and they interviewed me on that TV. That footage is on my old outdated website. But you'll see me talking about Till as catalyst. And
I have seen that.
Wait a minute, one of the persons who was there, I went back again and spoke because my co-author, Wilfred Samuel, who passed last year, now I may as well say last year, but it was this year, but this year will be over in a few hours. But anyway, Wilfred and I did the first book on Toni Morrison in 1990. And so he invited me there to speak. And so I had spoken a couple of times at the University of Utah, and there was this guy now that he's a great Emmet Till, he's an Emmet Till scholar. Well, I signed your book for you. Your Emmet Till book, remember? And you've read it. I know you've read it because the title of your book has something to do with the movement that shocked the world and propelled the movement. Those words come directly from the first chapter of my dissertation.
Did he cite you?
It comes from my book.
Yeah. He didn't cite her. No, he didn't.
Wait a minute. He's the expert. He got a nice big fat book, but I'm not indexed anyway. I just looked at him and smiled. I said, but my colleague had me. He said, this is the definitive authority on Emmet Till. She speaks first.
Wow.
And then he came after me. Oh, nothing. Okay. Nothing he said in his book is anything significant. Nothing new for me. And then after that, there was a third speaker who was a constitutional lawyer from the San Francisco, I think, Bay Area. And he said, I've read all of Dr. Hudson-Weems' works on Emmet Till, Africana Womanism, Toni Morrison. He said she's always on time and very precise. Very fast. Right. And he asked him a couple of questions, and the man was looking kind of funny, like, he said, he's talking, he said, like, the Dred Scott decision. And the guy looks, he said, and of course, we're talking about also the separate but equal, Jim Crow laws in 1890s. And, you've heard of Plessy versus Ferguson.
Absolutely.
I think I'm not too. He said, what do you mean? It's nothing to know. It's separate but equal. Simple as that. Dred Scott, blacks have no rights that whites were bound to respect. Simple as that. And you talk to this guy, he didn't really know all of this.
Right.
He learned what he wanted to learn from my book and did some more research and all that kind of stuff. And he ran with, and now some of our blacks think that they're top scholars and they're the experts. Somebody asked the man down at the Duke University, it's just amazing how you did all that. How did you do it? I wanted to say, please, can we call in? I'll tell you how I did. He read one of Clenora Hudson-Weems' books. There is nothing he says that's new. This whole thing, for example, that he's writing about blood on Emmet and how this lady, what's her name, Carolyn Bryant is recanted, and then you have blacks saying, oh yeah, if she had lied on him, and then he would be still alive. I said, then you're a lie. He was already dead and buried by the time she lied. In that sense, what she lied about, she wasn't lying about the fact that he whistled. He whistled. I proved that. I told Mamie, there's no way that I can say he allegedly whistled. Mamie, you weren't there, and of course I wasn't there. I said, but Emmet whistled. I got the proof of all the people who were there. His cousins, the men on the front porch who were, playing, checkers, the man who was stacking everything, Too Tight Collins. They heard it. The woman comes out shooting a gun and called them all these, MFs and everything like that. He whistled. But what happened in the trial 3.5 weeks after he was dead and buried, there was the lie. When she said, the man says, leading her on, did he squeeze you tight? Did he hug you and say, how about a date, baby? Yes, he did all that. I dramatized all that too. It happened. Yes, he said all that. That was the lie. But the lie that she told didn't make a difference at all. He was already dead and buried. Give me a break.
Yeah.
That's racism killed him already because he whistled. He was going through the rites of passage, being managed like most boys at that age. So what? It didn't give them the right to kill him, but that's the problem. That's the problem. And so I like to talk about that. And it's just a lot with Emmet Till that they don't have. And I don't care to talk about too much now because they'll add that in their script and things that they're doing now. They got enough with my books. I know. So other things I'm not talking about.
I know Zakia wants to get some questions in.
Yeah, so we have several questions that the audience been waiting patiently, man. They want those questions in there. So one question from one of the brothers in the comments says that he would like to know, how do powerful Black women scholars plan on countering the mainstream feminism agenda because the enemy has covered so many bases with the young generation so far?
Yeah, well, all we can do, I'm just one person, that's all. All I can do is I just got through with another book 13. I got book 14 about ready to drop maybe in another week or so. I just keep writing. I'm open for engagements if people want to have me to speak at their functions. Now we're doing it Zoom or whatever. I can speak, I can just tell, and then you know how it is. Once you tell somebody else, they tell somebody else, and they tell somebody else. The word gets around. I can't make them invite me to their venues and probably don't want to go anyway. But at any rate, there are Black people who know about my work. My work is truly, truly global. That's one good thing. There are places that you go to outside this country, and you mention it, they know exactly what's going on. Too many people here have been listening to the wrong people, and they're not totally guiltless. Because, all you got to do is go on, YouTube, and you can see some things. I know it's saturated with all the other stuff, but there are people like you guys who know. Just make sure that you say it. Make sure that you spread the word. Because if we don't spread the word, it's not going to get out. That's what we've always done. Spread the word. So all you got to do is to look me up, even though my website is outdated because some issues came here with budget changes here at the university. And so it's not updated, but honey, it's actual, it's factual. They don't know about this book, which is the reprint, of the 93 classic Africana Womanism Reclaiming Ourselves, but it has 5 new chapters from Africana Womanism to Africana Melanated Womanism, some additional stuff. But all you got to do is to Google my name. My God, is all on the Google page, right?
But that's just it. Some of our younger sisters, and I think this is where Zakia and I,
Right.
ended up engaging on this point. Some of the younger sisters, they only know who the establishment have pushed, right?
That's
So
right.
some very interesting people. So this is the interesting thing. You have a cadre of women who were involved in the Black liberation struggle, who were in the Black nationalist struggle, who were characterized as being affiliated with either the Panthers or other organizations. And that's not necessarily true, because many of them weren't, but there are sisters who were, right? So Assata Shakur and Kathleen Cleaver and all of this. So those sisters were actually Panthers. And let me just say something about women and Panthers and Black national organizations. Let's be very clear. The African woman, the Black woman who was involved in the positive transformation of Blackness during those periods, the Black Power movement, the Black is Beautiful movement, those women made up the masses of political organizations such as the Black Panther Party. Okay, that's another commentary about our community in particular and the women. See,
it don't matter.
Dr. I was going to say really quickly.
Really quickly, Sister Valethia Watkins down at Howard. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw her revisionist history project. That paper, that is amazing, because she actually goes and show how current Black feminists and a lot of the ones like you all were talking about intersectionality earlier, they go back, and I've been on podcasts where they go back and label women like Assata Shakur as a feminist. And I go
absolutely.
I go off.
But that's just like, okay, so let's take that scenario. They go back and just in the same way, like, so let's look at it on 3 levels. So I am in the process, and even before me and Dr. Weems and I got reconnected, I've been working on a project to talk about Africana Womanism and our antiquity. And part of looking at that, I started doing a survey of all the books written on women's history in the world. And it's crazy, because I'm at the Metropolitan Museum to look at the exhibit on Hatshepsut, our first woman pharaoh. And no, nobody in the terms of Kemet thought she was a man, and she was not pretending to be a man. She was a woman. Everyone knew she was a woman. Okay. And that's their interpretation. Them saying that she pretended to be a man. That's a Western interpretation. Yeah. However, all these white women who had written their books about women in the world had to begin the story of women with who? African women. They have no history of their women in leadership. Okay, at all. So so exactly, is that Dr. Clark's book, or is that?
That's Dr. Clenora Hudson-Weems' book.
Okay, so that's just exactly. So they do not. So they begin their story when they want to tell the history. So say it in a simple way. When they want to tell the story, the history of women in this world, they have to begin with us, their mothers. 2, when you start talking about feminism as it emerges in the Western Hemisphere, particularly in America, this struggle is overwhelmingly carried by African women who survived the institution of enslavement, and also understand not only they're fighting the institution of enslavement, like Sojourner Truth and the Mariah Stewarts and the Harriet Tubmans, but they also are human and should have the full access to one's human rights. I'm thinking to myself, how lazy, how slow of white women to be here for X number of years and have no status until the enslaved remind you that you should. And then in the contemporary sense, both in that context and in the contemporary sense, and I would consider the 70s, 60s, 70s contemporary, what do? They take strategies and tactics from our struggles, right? The remix. But of course, exclude us. Not that we need them, but my point is this: at no point in their own history, are they doing what they do without us as a reference? Okay, that's just what it is. That's just the historical fact of it. And so when we talk about how do we tell young sisters or open their eyes to the fact that, listen, we can't disconnect ourselves from the historical landscape. History is how we got here. Okay? History
That's
is how
right.
we got here. How do white women get where they are? Yes, we were there. They use us as their stepping stone, their blueprint, their line, right? Their line for their organizations. And so, like, ultimately, I think that conversations like this, okay,
Right.
and also Dr. Weems, I know Dr. Weems, uh you had asked the question, not Dr. Weems, Dr. Weems, Zakia, you asked the question about the tenets of Africana Womanism. One of them is NOMO, right? Self-naming. We are self-naming. We don't have
That's right.
to reference them. So that's one of the things we need to get into, like in terms of giving them the meat of what it means to be more than a feminist, because African women are so much more than feminists. That's the bottom line.
That's right.
Okay,
The
I'm gonna
next
stop
question.
there.
No, the next question. This is great. The next question came from another brother. He wants to know, do you see any issue with the Black Girl Magic movement, especially as it pertains to putting Black women at the front to be the face of the white power structure?
Dr. Weems, you want to take that? Or
No, you're doing great. Just continue.
well, listen,
I'm
give
enjoying.
me the question one more time. What do we do with this Black Girl Magic? What does it say it again?
It says, so, okay, let me read the question one more time.
Okay.
Okay. It says, do you see any issues with the Black Girl Magic movement, especially as it pertains to putting Black women at the front to be the face of the white power structure? And I think they're talking about economics in this piece.
This is the thing. I get what you're saying, because also too, I think about that a lot when I see even my own friends or women that I know who invoke this Black girl magic, because honestly, that's just, to me personally, sure, I like the idea of empowering Black women, empowering Black girls, but we're so much more than that, right? So just a Black version of maybe what's girl power, that's not enough for me. And the reason that's not enough for me, when I talk about I can't talk about who I am individually without talking about who we are historically. I can't, right? Because for me, I belong to my ancestors, and I'm so much of a production of them, meaning as both an African person and as a woman, my very existence has everything to do with all the freedoms won by African women in particular, and African people at large in this space. So I'm never not connected to that. That being said, I want to, I want to, in my mind, make this connection that even this idea that Black women are singularly at the head of our communities has something to do with this white establishment, right?
Absolutely.
So erase the man. Just give you a perfect example. Dr. Weems, you were talking about Toni Morrison and her work. I love Toni Morrison. She wrote the book Beloved. I'm going to just show you just how this works. The story Beloved is really the story, a dramatization, a fictional version of what? The story of Margaret Garner, who survived slavery, ran from Kentucky into Ohio, crossed the Ohio River when it was frozen, and got to freedom, right? But in the book Beloved, they tell the story as though she was the sole individual who ran from freedom with her children, sent her children ahead, gets into Ohio, and has 20 or 30 days of freedom before the bounty hunters and the slavers come to get her and her children. But the true story of Margaret Garner is that she escapes enslavement with her husband and her children. And they crossed the Ohio River at one rare moment when it was frozen. Okay. And she makes her way to freedom, and they have freedom for X number of days before the bounty hunters and slavers come for them. And she decides to kill one of her children to
the
keep
intention was
them
to kill all of them.
right, exactly. But she kills one of them successfully, knocks the others out, but successfully kills one of them, the 2-year-old, before they can take him. And then they arrest her and the whole family, the husband and the wife. They say she could not stand trial in Ohio because she was, in fact, an escaped slave under the Fugitive Slave Act. And so she would be sent back to Kentucky. And on her way across the Ohio River on a boat, she let the youngest child, who she had recently had, the infant, slip into the icy Ohio River, successfully killing 2. And of course, she's seen as a savage, a monster. Because why? Because America couldn't take the time to see that they were the savages, the monsters. The institution of slavery was the monster, the savagery that she was trying to keep her children from. My point of saying that is that the rewrite, and I love Toni Morrison, but when Oprah gets that story on film.
Don't even talk about the film. Just talk about the story.
Who is the woman who helps the fictional, right? Who helps the fictitious character of Margaret Garner, meaning who helps Setha? It is a lone white woman. And how realistic is it that when have white women been our assistants and assisted us in our liberation? That has almost never happened. Even further, there's a full erasure of the man in the story. There's no man.
Always
there's only a lone white
man.
woman. And then, of course, she makes it to the mother. So it's totally matriarchal. But then, of course, the only assistant, a Black woman, an African woman who has survived and escaped from enslavement, only help she has is white woman. Now, that's the kind of thing I feel like it's commercialized. I don't think I'm great just because I'm me. I know I'm great because I'm a product of my ancestors who claim victory over all that you could imagine here. That's the end of it. So Black girl power, right? Black girl magic and girl power. I'm like, okay, so ground that in something. That in something, because you are anchored in something in your community, be it to the men, the children, your ancestors. We are, our whole existence has everything to do with our ancestors.
Don't you see the real thing here?
Yes.
It's not, the real thing is not even about this girl power. It's about, it's about trying to
individualism, rugged individualism.
Let me just say what I want to say. It's about bringing the Black man down. You get it?
Right.
So you bring the Black man down by elevating the Black woman. She's already the center of the family anyway.
Right.
She's a nurturer. Those 18 characteristics of African womanism that set forth, the closing ones are mothering and nurturing without apology. That's what she does. So she doesn't, and not only that, it's male, female in it together. They work together. There is a love that she has for her male companion. Okay, so she's already realized. She's already complete. Right. So you're going to take her now and make her a symbol of girl power and whatever you call that thing, as if she needs some more. Right. She doesn't need any more. She knows who she is. And her male companion knows who she is too. They've always worked together. He listens to her for her to help. They say, and I guess it must have come from behind every great man is a great woman too. I mean, they work together. So he already respects her. He doesn't need for her to be plucked away from him and held up as being this great powerhouse. And there he is, this piece of scum that they're trying to relegate him to. It's
That's
disgusting.
exactly what's in
It's
popular
disgusting.
culture.
And if I was a man, I would be sick of this girl power. Get the crap out of my face. We already know that you got power. You don't have to go around prancing around being the symbol for the white folk. You're already known in the family to be. Listen, when I couldn't get a job, who got a job? You did. It might have been as a domestic, but you kept the family together. You think I don't know that? You know, the man knows the black woman and that she's got his back, boo. He's always known that. But we're trying to make him not remember that. Now
There's
she's
so many young feminists
she's gonna be
undoing that.
enemy. His enemy. Now she's hooked
That-
up with other outsiders, and she's this powerhouse. You know, she's it, and I'll tell you where to go because I don't need you. You know, I can do bad all by myself.
Let me
You know,
tell
all
you,
this
what
stuff
you're
is bad
saying
and all that kind of crap. You know,
is historically accurate. What you're saying is absolutely historically accurate. However, because I don't think you're on Twitter, I don't think you're on the social media. However, there have been entire hashtags in this new digital age. And mind you, white men, white people in general, but white men in particular, right, have done some of the most savage things in world history. But you want to know what has been a trending hashtag on social media, on Twitter in particular?
Please
Black
do tell.
men are trash. That's what young sisters are saying. And it was started by young women or bots or whoever. I think it's arguable because we know COINTELPRO is real. So let me say that. But you do see profiles of black women and actually some real black women who work for universities and young women who work for publications. There was an entire hashtag. You can go and look at it, Dr. Wright. Just put in hashtag black men are trash. I've never seen white women create a hashtag, even during the Kavanaugh hearings, that white men are trash.
Woo.
Yeah.
So we're living in an era.
We let them make us our own enemies.
Yes.
And that's ridiculous. You know what? I tell you, all I can say is somebody's got to do something. God is going to have to do it because it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, we have to say praise
the thing about it is that too many black men have abandoned black women for white women. And black women are tired of that too. You know, you need to love and respect your women. And when your buddies don't, you need to say, man, get your head together. Because we can't go to them with our heads up if you're running around here running away from them. You know, you get the positions and the jobs and the money and you the this and the that and everything. And the first thing you do is run outside of your community. I'm not saying that you might not maybe fall for another person, and that's your business, you know. But en masse, you know, when you don't want, because a black woman, you know, she's too, you know, like Toni Morrison says, you know, that they want to stereotype us.
Yeah.
And you know, Monahan did an excellent job with it.
Daniel Patrick Monahan.
I mean, that thing has really messed us up because black men left thinking that black women were their enemies.
Wow.
And
we have to know that was intentional.
What we have to do is to remind them that we are not their enemies.
That's right.
That we are strong, and you like that. We need that. We don't need a weak woman with a strong man, and you're fighting against the whole big system. We need both of us to be strong and to fight the system together. That's what we need. You know, and if you can do that together and appreciate each other, then it'll be better for us.
That's right.
But and so if black women would understand that, they wouldn't readily join that organization that would place them up there as the strong sister power and all that. But what about your men, the black men with power? They were born with strength, more strength than we to a great degree. We have this here, and we know how to create and how to shape and how to nurture and how to love, all those lovely things. We know how to do that. But black men have been traditionally strong. We know that, but they're doing everything to break them. And we got to stop. We got to stop letting that happen. We got to say, no, I'm with you. Let us together say, no, they haven't got a friend in me like this. If they think that they're going to turn me against you, they got another call coming, because that's not going to happen. That's what we got. We got to be strong enough, even though they have come across paranoid and silly sometimes and reactionary and anti-black women because y'all think this and that and all the other. We got to say, honey, listen, I am not your enemy. I am not your enemy. You got to have some confidence in me. because we could never have gone through slavery if we were separate.
Without each other. That's right.
And you know it. We gave each other strength all the time.
You know what? I actually make that
connection
again.
That's the problem. We have to
because
find
I'm
it
like,
again.
y'all sitting up here, we still on the plantation.
Something happened.
And you still fighting. What's wrong with you? You know? But listen, here's another question.
There you are.
I can hear you. Here's another question, and this is actually a very interesting question, because this is the other thing that has happened. Somebody somewhere has decided that Black men are going to be separate from Black women and the Black LGBT community. So one of the questions in the chat is, what are your thoughts on transgender politics as it relates to the Black community?
I mean, I'm not sure what that question means.
It seems like it's broad. It seems like it's broad. He just says, any thoughts on transgender politics as it relates to the Black community? Just whatever your initial thoughts are on it.
You know, so my line in general in relationship to all things is a humanist line, really, to be quite frank. And so my attitude towards that is this. You know, the transgender community, they are human, and so they deserve the rights as human beings. However, let me just be very clear about something. What has been pitted, so what I see developing in this country in particular is the LGBTQ community being pitted against the Black community in terms of a competition for rights and recognition of rights. Absolutely.
And resources.
I see historically during the Obama administration a preference for this group over the other group in terms of legislation, right? So not legislating at all around the condition of Black people, but legislating around the condition of LGBTQ people. Let me just say this. For all of the people who are in the LGBTQ community, one has to ask, because this comes up a lot in Black discussions, right? Pitting Blackness against one's sexuality. I want to ask one question. I guess I'm answering the question with another question, which is this. White males who are always on their racist job never have to choose one or the other.
Wow.
So those white men who are active racists and have always been active racists in this country, when they are gay, does someone say, hello, are you going to be gay today? They're on their racist job when they're acting out in their capacity or living their truth as a homosexual or gay person. And there is no, don't say, let me get off my racist job so I can be gay because, you know, gay rights are important or human rights are intertwined with that. No, they're active racists while they're gay all the time, all day, every day.
Even on the plantation.
If you know the history, exactly. If you know the history of white male homosexuality, then you really get to the crux of it, because they ain't nobody but them. And they are actively oppressing everybody. And they're only equal in their mind as each other. My point is simply this. I don't have any qualms or really much to say about the LGBTQ agenda in relationship to the Black agenda, because this is the thing. With whatever your identity is, you can't hide your Blackness, not in this country or nowhere else in the world. And that being said, so it is not, you do not have to prioritize one over the other, because it is already prioritized in this society for you. Okay. So some people, you can know them and never know them personally, one way or another, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual. So I have no agenda. As far as comparing oppressive conditions, listen, let's just look at the history. There is no history of LGBTQ people being enslaved systematically. But it is so let me say it another way. There is no group of people, not Asians, not white people, not even white women we are talking about, who have experienced enslavement in this society. However, there are a people who are at the foundation of this society who experienced systematic enslavement, racial enslavement, which was consciously adopted. And that being said, there is a legacy, a continuation in that, in terms of policy and society and politics and all of that. So that being said, there is no parallel group. Okay, there is no similar group. I cannot compare LGBTQ struggle for rights and recognition to the African struggle
but
in
so many
America.
people do.
Certainly.
Ooh.
And just, okay, true enough, people are, yes, we have all been oppressed, but not for the same reasons and not at the same time historically, right? Because you better believe some of what is playing out in the institution of slavery is male domination of other men, meaning the violation. We know about the violation of women, but do you think homosexuality didn't exist in the white male population in America that were also slavers of the slave owning class? We know about that when we really get into the nuts and bolts of that. And you think that they stopped oppressing their enslaved persons because they realized that they were different from the next man in terms of their sexuality? No, it didn't stop a beat. Now they would use the bodies of their enslaved persons to derive pleasure from. So listen, there are different issues. I think all of our humanity has to be respected, but I'm not going to feed into that being pit against the other. Like, hey, we first, they're first, they're next. No. Are you serious? Our struggle has been continuous. It'll be continuous. We've been here. Slavery and this American paradigm is a moment in the history of African people, and therefore only a moment in the history of African women also.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One last question, and then we're going to wrap up. This has actually been great. I'm actually so excited that Dr. Weems actually joined us. For those of you who are
still... Can you call me Hudson-Weems?
Hudson-Weems.
I'll be a Hudson for the rest of my life.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I stand corrected. Hudson-Weems. And I actually appreciate you for correcting me, because my last name is hyphenated, and I actually do the same thing. I actually implore people to call me Sankara Jabbar. So thank you. The one question here, well, first of all, Dr. Hudson-Weems, did you have any response to that other question? I wanted to allow you to answer.
No, because, actually, I'm like this. At some point, when you put too much emphasis on something, it just completely destroys the real issue at hand. And that's
loud and clear. Loud and clear. One final question here says, what are your thoughts regarding Black feminists claiming Black men are the white people of the Black community? So, Dr. Wright, I'm sure you are familiar with Very Smart
the
Brothers,
article,
the publication, and they wrote that about a year and a half ago and got, I want to say, billions of shares. People still talking about that. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Will you repeat that, please?
Yes, ma'am. It says, what are your thoughts regarding Black feminists, some men, because there's a brother that wrote the article. What are your thoughts regarding Black feminists claiming Black men are the white people of the Black community?
So
you want to break that down for Dr. Hudson, because
I haven't seen the article. Go on.
So
we need to send. Go ahead, Tyrene. Go ahead.
This article is actually written by a Black man who actually would identify as LGBTQ. I believe.
Damon Young.
He's
not LGBT. I think he's married. Well, I don't know. Maybe he's bi, but he's married to a Black woman.
Oh, he is? Okay, that's even better. Great.
Go on. What did he say?
So basically, he is saying in the Black community, Black men are like white men, or like say white men in terms of the conservative position. He's saying in the Black community, Black men are the ones who literally outlines who beat, kill, abuse Black women, much in the same way as the police beat, kill, and abuse Black men. But also they are the conservatives who hate or perpetuate oppression onto everyone else. So in the Black community, the Black man is that conservative male patriarchal figure that acts out oppressively to everyone else. And so did you have the same understanding, Zakia? Okay, and it was a very controversial article. It went everywhere. It got immediate response from a lot of people, and I'll just in short tell you what my takeaway. Listen, he wasn't all wrong. I think the position was co-opted quickly by the wrong people. Okay, so surely feminists will latch on to something for one reason, one group will latch on to something for another reason. Let's be very clear. Just like we have many, so we're doing this right now because we have some sisters who, before they can identify and define themselves, they are already identifying and speaking and in working in concert with white women, because they see being a woman as white woman, right? White women are women first. Listen, I will be the first to have the realest conversation with anybody about the pathology that our men have taken on in the context of white supremacy and culture. So we have many of our men who absolutely are functioning in our communities not as Black men. See, psychological warfare is a serious thing. They're Black men physically, but the white mind is upon them. So you have Black men who don't even view Black women as Black women. No value to them. It's just a woman. That's just
I think
this.
the problem,
That's
really quickly, I was going to say
said,
the problem with the article though is that they painted such a broad brush.
Oh yeah,
by saying
it's very
that,
broad.
And so I think the Black men that he's so-called describing are a very small, minute part of the community.
Well,
in my opinion.
it is now, but let me just be very clear. At one point, see, I think for sisters, race in America is such a obvious and overt issue we have to contend with. We come to the understanding of our being a woman in our community much later, how that works. I do believe that men come to that understanding, them and us, even within our communities, at a different point in their lives, okay? And I'm saying that from experience, which has a lot to do with why you have issues you have about oppressive behavior in our own community. We can't deny we have oppressive behavior. An older sister, before I understood all of these dynamics, and we're just talking about us, we ain't talking about nobody else. We're talking about our people and our people who sometimes have African consciousness within our community, right? Forget everybody else in the world right now. I, at one point in my life, was young enough and naive enough not to understand the dynamics in our community. We're not incapable of oppression. We have oppression in our community. Okay, men oppress women. Some women oppress children. Okay, let's be real. All right, we talking about in our community. Men oppress other men who they perceive as weaker. Women oppress other women so we are all capable of oppression and oppressing people. That being said, what this older sister or this elder sister told me years ago, in my effort to say, hey, we're working together in our community, she said, you know nothing of a time in our community where Black women were overtly oppressed, okay? And she has me by 40 plus years, okay? I'm much younger sister. I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. When I'm defending some older men, she said, okay, but listen, don't pipe down, because you weren't even born at this time where we experienced certain oppressive behavior. And I know and I'm gonna give you some personal contradictions. There is a time, even in my own family tree, okay, where I know family members to say that, yeah, these men beat their wives. I'm just going to be very real, okay? And that was not a headlining news, okay? Now, for you and I, our generation, are you serious? That's going to be a problem. It's not even happening like that. But so I don't come from a time and place where that I accept.
Are you familiar with Dr. Curry's work?
I am. I don't accept oppression from men as normal, huh?
On intimate partner. I mean, you brought up the beating, and I wanted to make sure we were accurate in terms
Yes,
of the
yes,
intimate
I'm
partner
familiar.
violence. Is actually bi-directional in our community, according to the data.
Back and forth, but yes, intimate partner, but yes, but also let's be very, very clear. And this was controversial as a result of that article. That article provoked a conversation and highlighted some statistics that came out by the CDC where what? Black women.
That article has been debunked.
Right. Hold on. The statistics were not wrong. The statistics weren't wrong, but that article caused a conversation and people started comparing. Let me just tell you what the actual numerical difference was. So 20 more Black women the year before had been murdered by their intimate partners than white women or other groups of women. That's what it boiled down to. That being said, it caused a firestorm of a conversation. This is my position on all of it, okay? None of it to me is acceptable. One, I would be ignorant to act like I don't know that there are some people who are physiologically Black or Black presenting, but don't have any African or Black consciousness. Okay. And view me the way a white man would. I have heard very educated people say, act, and show things like that. Okay. So we can't be oblivious to the fact that some of our people, like, so let's just take an extreme example. Clarence Thomas. Sure, he's Black presenting, but do I think that—
and Barack Obama too?
Absolutely Black presenting, but do I consider, do we have the same values? And that's how I identify myself, by values. No, I would not consider.
I don't have the same values as Obama either.
What? Me either. Definitely not. I definitely don't, because I have a whole, listen, we do a whole nother show on Obama and my criticism of his policy as someone who studies policy, okay? One of the most hyper violent people in terms of actual policy, not what one thinks, but actual action. And I wrote an article at one point because he's, unlike few presidents, he had 4 occupations at one time. A lot of people missed that about Obama, but he's a whole nother story. My point is that sure, we have some men who think like white men. This is part of the tensions between what we're talking about power, meaning white women, like many of our men, are both vying for power. Okay. And what they do with that power tells us everything we need to know about them. I always say there's a struggle for power and there's a struggle for liberation, and they're not one and the same. We are in close spaces with each other. We are often in proximity, but how you know who is in what struggle will be revealed by how they use their power. If you can see some measure of power and hit me over the head with it, then we're not in the same struggle, because the power that I get, I must use to liberate myself and my people and the children, which all belong to us, my men and my family in the community. Yes, there are Black men who can seize power, hit anybody and everybody over the head with it, and take off in the other direction. Because if your only objective is power, then you are not necessarily committed to acting principled with it. And that's just the bottom line. We see it all day. Watch how people use their power. Are our men in our community above or below using their power to abuse people in our community?
Please define power, because Black men that I see, even in my own immediate family, the Black men that I see even in my community are mostly homeless. So what power do they have?
Oh, no. Well, listen, let me just say something to you. Power does not have to be institutional power.
I'm asking you to explain it. Yeah.
Power is any ability to dominate, right? Or uplift. So for example, you think that long before people have institutional power, perceptions around physical power and capability, and listen, let's get down to some real basics. Men and women are not physically equal. Okay.
Oh, there are some people who would disagree with you on that, particularly those in the LGBT community. We just got done talking about them.
That's great that they might disagree, but this is the thing. That's because they're redefining what they're calling men and women. Okay.
In fact, there's a question in there that says, are transgender women women? Are they women?
They're transgender women. I'm like Chimamanda Adichie. They're transgender women.
Okay.
They're not biologically, like, I'm born a woman. They have a new term for it, cis women. I don't know what the hell that means. but the point is that I'm born a woman. Let me tell you what, to me, what it means to be a woman, and that's not without any adaptations, because this conversation happened on the internet at one point too, and people started going back and forth. Oh, so and so is presenting themselves as this gender and that gender. This is the bottom line with it. You are biologically a woman if you have ovaries and you have estrogen, and that causes certain bodily functions to happen. Period. I do not have testosterone, even if I was to present myself as a male, or if you present yourself in a certain way. So there's presentation, and then there's the biological reality. Period. So you are free to present yourself however you want to. But to this day and to the end of time, the ingredients for a human being is what? An egg and a sperm. And eggs come from ovaries, and those come from a woman. Okay, and sperm come from men, and they come from testicles, and what causes that is testosterone, right? And estrogen in the woman. So my thing is this: no, I'm not going to say transgender women are women. Do you want some of what we go through in terms of the biological woman? Okay, if you want to present yourself as a woman, and that comes, whatever comes with it, that's one's business. But a biological woman is what I am. Born a woman, bodily functions, and an estrogen level to go with that helps along with the bodily functions, producing eggs, not sperm.
Right.
My point is this: a male, someone's born a male, biologically a male, and a person who's born and biologically a female, they are not equal in strength. I don't care what nobody says. There is a very big difference. And I know some strong women, but even they will explain to you that they cannot contend with the strength of a man who is possibly even smaller than them. That being said, early on, people are aware of physical differences. And yes, as soon as you are capable of dominating someone physically, you are capable of oppressing. Absolutely. And so, yes, you find men who are very often powerless or perceive themselves as powerless, because you say, some brothers that are homeless. It don't mean that brother is, because he's homeless, he's incapable of beating his homeless partner. He too is. And that's part of what we talk about in terms of
I think
the
that's some
African.
academic BS, sister.
No, but
I
listen,
got to be honest with you.
okay,
Some of this stuff is
hold
ridiculous.
on. Let me ask you a question. You think because, see, that's the line white women have. If you're oppressed, then you can't oppress. We
No,
do
I'm
a
not saying
great deal
that.
of oppressing.
I don't know that I would
Absolutely.
actually call it. I would use the term oppression to define that, especially since we know that on the plantation there have always been, because of the overall conditions of the community, we turn on each other. That's any community. Like when they try to say black on black violence, I reject that. And so does Amos Wilson and other African centered scholars. No
So
one
you
wants to
think
look at the
everything that
overall conditions that influence the behavior that you see within the community. What actually needs to happen is some level of healing. But to say that he's an oppressor, like the white man who
no,
put both of them out on the street
Let me say
because of the policies and practices around gentrification and other things, I think is absolutely a nefarious kind of intermingling of the terms. That's just my opinion.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that oppression only came about as a result of us being in this context? It doesn't. Meaning,
What context?
being in the Western context, surviving enslavement, being in oppressive society, that we only understand oppression in this context, meaning prior to this, there was no oppression amongst African people?
I didn't say that. Well, why are you? What
No,
are you talking about?
I'm asking that question because you're saying that it's taking it out of the context. In this context, yes, much of our behavior is indicative of the society and the structures and the systems and the systematic oppression that we experience. However, we have to also understand that there are dynamics, and this is one of the things that it's a double-edged sword. As much as we want to say we are acting in response to the society we live in, we also must understand that within our communities, we are both good, we are both bad, we are winners, we are losers, we are lovers, we are haters. We have our own dynamic within our community. And that
Of
being
course.
right.
That doesn't make somebody an okay, go ahead.
So that being said, no, the idea that we can, because there are no systematic benefits to Black men or rewards to Black men acting out oppressively, doesn't mean that they don't oppress. They certainly do. And I'm just going to be very real. I spent most of my life, I come out of a political organization, okay? I'll say it. I was in the AAPRP, and there's a woman's wing, a separate wing for
Can you
women.
tell the audience what AAPRP is? Maybe people don't know what it is.
It's the All African People Revolutionary Party. That being said, the structure of the organization creates so there's the organization itself, and then there's the women union. And part of what we understand with structuring an organization like that way is because we recognize that women have to struggle for themselves to address the oppression of women by men. Okay? Now, men are not excluded from that woman's union because men are the oppressors in that context. And that's here, there, anyway. However, women need to strategize, work together to struggle against oppression. Men have to be allowed to come to an understanding by engaging us, but could not be in decision-making positions or make decisions or control within the women's union. Now, Sekou Touré talks about that. Sekou Touré of Guinea, who ideologically was in that work. He wrote Women in Africa, okay? That's one of the books he wrote. And he talks about the fact that it is the job of men to struggle against sexism because they are the creators and the perpetuators of sexism. What is sexism? The oppression of women. Absolutely. And we have that issue here on the African continent where I also live. And I live not like many of the academicians who go to Africa. I lived I entered the population, okay? Meaning I was married to an African man. I know what it is to be an African man's wife. And that's very different than taking a trip to Africa and thinking one knows about what it's like to be an African man's wife or anything else. But my point is this. Absolutely. We have work to do within our community around oppressing each other, whether white folks are here or not, because this is the bottom line. They've only been here 7,000 years. We've been here millions of years. We will see them come and go. Okay? And what we're going to do? Who is going to have the right as human beings to walk this earth free of negation by man, woman, or child? And I say,
let's talk about the children.
Resolve.
I'm glad you brought up the child, because you mentioned earlier really quickly that Black women can oppress children. And that's actually something that has been coming up a lot, particularly from Dr. Stacey Patton. And she's one of the few scholars that I think is really an expert on the abuse of women or Black women and Black children. But Black children don't necessarily have entire departments dedicated to them. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Nobody's really taught. And she's actually gotten a lot of pushback, particularly from feminists, Black feminists, who want to gloss over the fact that there is a lot of abuse in the Black community that's not necessarily committed by Black men onto Black children, but the main perpetrators are Black women. And just wondering what your response is to that.
Whew, you hitting a nerve, because this is something I talk about, just in the context of this conversation. Let me say one thing to bring this home. First of all, you guys brought up intersectionality, another term for the political term. I always understood it as triple oppression: racism, sexism, and economic oppression expressed as capitalism. Okay, and we also termed it three stones on our back, that Black women, African women around the world have the three stones on our back: racism, sexism, and economic capitalism or economic oppression. That being said, anybody who has a measure of power can oppress. And I fundamentally believe that, whether that's physical, one dominating someone who's physically stronger, dominating someone else, we are all capable of that. And the human struggle really is to master oneself, get control of oneself. That's whatever environment you're in. First of all, we have a culture here where we have adopted some things that I do not think that is our own personally. Okay. You will hear in the context of our culture, and I challenge these things even within my own family. Okay. Actively. Matter of fact, this year, where I challenged some family members around their approach to discipline. Okay. And I do think that some of our methods of discipline are residual from enslavement. Some of our methods of discipline have to do with us being oppressed people.
So Black women didn't abuse women in antiquity, the same as like Black men oppressed women in antiquity.
I don't understand your question. Go back.
So I'm asking you a question. So is there a history prior to enslavement of Black women oppressing Black children?
I don't know.
The same as Black.
I don't know one. Okay. And like I said, I can reference, I'll give you a perfect example from my own personal experience. Now, I've seen a lot of things in the African context, and that doesn't mean one thing or another, because that could have predated colonialism or come as a result of colonialism, right? Which we know is very violent, very oppressive, and it could have been produced from that. That being said, while living in Senegal in particular, I questioned some family members about their method of discipline for a young teenager, 13, 14 years old, a girl in particular. And I questioned about the means of discipline by the elders, her grandmother and other people in the family. My question was related to the fact that she was never physically disciplined in any way. And I thought that was interesting, because I do know what happens here in America with children who exhibit some of the same behavior. There would have been physical consequences to some of her behavior. When I asked this, the response was that, like, no, we don't discipline her that way, and nobody disciplines her that way. And if someone did, there might be a struggle and fight in the family, not physically, but with words, around physical discipline of this female child in the family. I was very surprised. I was surprised. That's all I said. That being said, in this space, it is very likely that some of our methods of discipline do originate with enslavement. I don't doubt that. Why? Because of some of the methods in which we get involved in disciplining, meaning not simply trying to teach the child a lesson, but trying to subdue them. Okay? There's a difference between spanking a child and breaking a child. And we were broken in order to accept the institution of slavery. Beating a child where you kill their spirit, where you make them continuously fearful. And we have that. I watch our people. One of the great things about being a social scientist is that you do watch people's behavior. And I do think that we have a lot of issues, for example, how we discipline our children. I once observed a situation where a woman who was involved in a domestic violence situation was actively engaging in similar violence with her male children. And I thought,
well,
to
there's
myself,
research to back that up, which is why I asked you if you were familiar with Curry's work and also Dr. Hassan
I've read a
Johnson.
little of Curry's work, but I'm not familiar with the other one. That being said,
You know,
we have to
Richard
really
Wright.
dig into that.
Richard Wright does an excellent. I've been listening to you, but
Mhm.
Richard Wright does an excellent thing in his autobiography. What was it called? Black Boy.
Yes.
When he
Or is it
was
Native Son?
got it.
Native Son?
No,
Okay.
Black Boy.
Mhm.
When his he was in a little fight with the white guys. You know,
Mhm.
the white guys, and he was and he ran home after he beat the little white guy up and everything, and he was, had been injured too, bleeding or whatever,
Mhm.
and the mother just all of a sudden just started beating him, and it was like, why? It's like, I've been injured too, I mean, nobody's beating that white boy up, we fought and made the best one win, and that was the end of that. Now I come home and you're gonna beat me some more. Her thing, of course, was she was trying to make it clear that he was not to fight the dominant culture, that he could end up being lynched or whatever. That was it.
Wow.
That he could be lynched or whatever. So she wants to break him so
That's
that
it.
he will not become endangered by the dominant culture that has the power to do more damage to him. That was
See,
it.
I can't compare that to white oppression. I can't.
No, I wouldn't.
I can't. That might be oppression, but I can't make a similar comparison.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not the same.
I wouldn't.
Well,
I wouldn't
no, but it doesn't have to be a thing to be problematic.
This was the 1930s, 1940s. Okay,
right.
We're talking about segregation all the way, Jim Crow all the way.
I mean, we still on the plantation. It's 2020.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
On the plant. This is in Mississippi. He was from Mississippi. Okay, and so she's like, boy, if you do that, if somebody gonna come and kill you. She's thinking about her son being killed. I'm gonna beat his butt so he doesn't do this again, because he could be taken from me forever. That was her fear, So I'm just saying that today it's another whole story for us, and the kinds of things that the kids are experiencing from their parents, a lot of that stuff is things that's kind of like handed down. The Bible
intergenerational.
The Bible says if you
spare the child, spoil the rod.
Yes.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Spoil the child. A lot of little things, that stick in the head, and they think they're doing the right thing so that the kid can be a better person and can survive all the threats that we as Black people are.
Or let's just be very real. Frustrated and yes, oppressed people systemically.
Yes.
Take their frustrations out on the vulnerable.
Exactly. That's exactly what's happening right now with the kids who are being forced to stay at home because of the pandemic. Their parents, they come in, hungry. Parents are knocking them down and everything because they used to get these breaks. Now they don't have the breaks. Not only that, they don't have the money to feed them properly. I'm hungry. Well, ain't no food here. That type of thing. It goes on and on. So it's that anger, and it's that striking out, and it's the taking advantage of the weak.
But what you're describing is the systemic oppression that we are still, as I guess Dr. Tyreen Wright would say, systemically, all of us don't necessarily have the power, and I don't see it in any kind of walk of life. And all the traveling that I've done and things of that nature. So I guess for me, I just have an issue. Certainly it is harm. Ain't nobody saying that we don't commit harm against each other. But I just have a problem with, I guess it sounds like black on black violence to me. That's all and I reject that term, as did many African-centered scholars. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
I don't think any of us
that.
I don't think that any of us can exonerate any of us can exonerate abusing a child.
No, and we shouldn't.
None of us can.
I'm not saying that. We're not exonerating what I'm calling for, but some people in the community want to call for all kinds of heinous things to happen to people who are doing things like that. And I don't come from that ethos. I believe that African people need, like we've had intergenerational trauma and harm collectively, Black men, Black women, and Black children. We also need intergenerational healing modalities for our community, and also cultural cohesion. I think we have to reject these Western forms of punitive kind of measures when things like this happen in our community. Calling the police for what? So they can finish killing people in the community?
Yeah.
There's an
see,
entire
okay, let
movement
me say
happening
this.
right now. There's an entire movement happening right now. Even Black liberals and some academics are starting to say, okay, we got to stop calling the police when there's domestic violence.
Of course.
That's happening. We got to stop calling the police when there's, we got to actually deal with this another kind of way. Even mental health crises, we got to deal with this a different kind of way, family. And that's the ethos that I come from. I'm not saying that we make excuses for the harm in the community, because I think people like to put people like me in a box when I say, well, wait a minute now. No, my husband is not oppressing me. I'm not oppressing him, right? But are we both oppressing a system of white domination? Absolutely, right? And are there sometimes ways in the community where we can act out sometimes out of the frustration that Dr. Hudson-Weems just pointed out? And it's not about making excuses. It's about recognizing what it's about. It's about recognizing the root of the issue. And it's also about looking for ways to heal that so that we can have a different response. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. I agree with that too. But let's take it a step further. Okay. None of what we're looking for in this space, right? For me, I feel like my existence won't always be in this space. I see myself outside of America overwhelmingly. However, for those of us who are in this space and will continue to be in this space, we've got to, when you said we've got to look at modalities of healing within our community.
Absolutely.
Yes, we do. But we also have to take some responsibility within our community for that.
That is taking responsibility.
I get you. I see that as sure. But part of the healing has to come with taking the responsibility. Right now, let's be very clear. Right now in our community, and I'm somebody who I would say I have been an active nationalist for most, if not all, of my adult life. We're not there. I don't know what the real religious factions of Black folks in this country are up to. I don't know what the whatever other groups, the straight-laced Negro factions, if you want to call that. But I have been someone who has been squarely positioned in the nationalist community. I'm Generation X, and that's rare, first of all, okay? Because my generation didn't particularly care to know anything about that kind of consciousness. I'm just being real. That being said, we ain't done no work on responsibility internally so that the healing can take place. And I had
some of us have done the work. I have to say that actually is not true.
Is that recent?
The Association of Black Psychologists have been doing that work. Yes, they have.
Okay, but listen,
and I will also say the Community Healing Network, led by Dr. Enola Aird and Dr. Cheryl Grills, have been doing that work.
Are you saying they're
Black nationalists? These are Black African-centered people.
So let me ask you a question. When the conversations come up for us to talk about accountability, we have seldom, in a grand way, had those conversations about what we do. Because we can talk forever about what the establishment does. We know what this is, okay? In terms of the larger society, we know what America is. And that's what I was going to say when we were talking about the foundation of America. America has always and never tried to pretend. This has always been an expression of white nationalists for the peasant classes of Europe. That being said, is that a book? I can't see it. Are you holding up a book?
I'm just wanting to just make sure we're real clear. And I want the audience to know that Black folks and Black men in particular have been doing the work. This is African Black psychology.
When you say doing the work, in what way? What you
said that the Black nationalists is nowhere near doing the work in terms of healing. And
no, I'm not saying nowhere. I said we are not that advanced. We are not moving in that direction. Even when we start to have conversations about this, we are.
Well, you and I come from two different experiences. I
So
see
for
the work that has
example,
been happening. Are you familiar with Dr. Kobe KK Cambone and
no.
you in the Black Master's community?
Wait. Cambone in Ghana?
No, he was an
No.
African American. He taught it in Tallahassee at Florida A&M and at Virginia
Oh, the
Union.
father. You're talking about the father. I know the younger Cambone, the son,
So
who is
this
in
is
Ghana.
Dr. Kobe. So that's what I'm saying. If we're not familiar with the work, we shouldn't say that it's not happening.
No, but it's not that saying. Listen, it doesn't. Let's all listen. Everybody on here has written books. Writing books is one thing. Acting it out and the practice is a whole other thing.
And you're right. I agree. The theory to the practice.
Because I can tell you, everybody.
The practice actually has been through the Association of Black Psychologists.
Listen, let me say something to you. Let me say something to you, sister. Let me say something to you, sister. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to say it in a strategic way, meaning this. There are a lot of people who theorize about how we should live. There's a lot of people who are actually on the blowhorn. And I'm glad that you clarified who that was. And I'm going to share something with you offline with regard to that. Nobody is above contradiction. Let me just say that.
I agree.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let me just say this. Always be careful, particularly with our old guard, of acting as though, I'm never coded, but I'm being coded for a particular reason, because I have in my possession, just literature countering a lot of what we might think about our elders. Let's be very clear. Some of our greatest people have the greatest contradiction and are great on theory and are nothing but contradiction in terms of practice. Okay? And when I'm saying, so I'm not even talking about now.
What I'm saying is there are people that are practicing. That's all I'm saying. Maybe you have something that you want to say, I guess, that's in a negative context or a contradiction about Dr. Kobe KK Cambone.
No,
you may be right about that because I don't know how old you are, but you may be right about that. What I am saying is that there are people, it may not be big enough, it may not be funded by white folks and all of that, but it is happening and people are doing. I'm a part of the Community Healing Network. I'm a part of the Emotional Emancipation Healing Circles. We healed an entire group of people in West Dayton, Ohio, to be ambassadors in the community to stop domestic violence, to stop us from hurting each other. Dr. Cheryl Grills, I hope you ain't got nothing negative to say about her, because she really is the stalwart when it comes to taking the theory, because she is an past president of the Association of Black Psychologists. She takes the theory to the practice. And it's not just in the United States context. I really want to encourage you to look at their work.
I would love to look at their work, and I don't have a problem that what I'm saying to you is what I'm saying to you in terms of, and matter of fact, it's interesting because I think the young brother who connected us, he and I just had this conversation on Mawali, Africa. And it was in response to, I don't know, maybe something that might have even he did an interview, and I said to him precisely what, and I'm not going to backtrack on this. He made a comment about the comment the sister made, or he was asked about the comment that the sister out there in Kentucky with the Breonna Taylor, who comes from, what is her name? Tamika Mallory. Okay, so the comment that she made that we may get past racism before sexism. Okay. And he chronicled her history in the, how would you say, civil rights context. And this is no fault of his. The private conversation I had with him is that I too have been not just in those spaces, but a production of those spaces. Okay. And I have witnessed a lack of addressing our issues. Okay. And a unwillingness to seize opportunity to attack those issues. One of the things I bring up is, for example, when we talk about the civil rights movement, and then we talk about the Black nationalist movement. Namely, people love to mention the Panthers. Listen, like who was it who said, I think it was Eldridge Cleaver, she said this was not revolutionary heaven, and we didn't expect it to be. That being said, many of the people in that space, while we're struggling for our collective liberation, have some deep contradictions around women, okay, and how they relate to sisters, and yes, engage in violence and oppressive behavior. And we can't just say, hey, well, it was just this guy and that guy. We know
who said that?
I'm not saying you said that. I'm saying that's very much how it's engaged very often. Oh, well, that was a isolated situation. We know, if we look at the biographies, the stories, the actual evidence of people who are in those spaces' lives, we know that there is something to our unwillingness to deal with some of our issues. I commend the people that you're involved with, but listen, we're talking about the nationalist community. We would love to be larger, but we're talking about how many, 4 decades, 5 decades of history, okay? And many, many people and many, many factions, okay, of us. And as factions, right? So I don't know if you ever went to the Institute of the Black World Conference, where there were so many factions of the nationalists, all very different, not on the same side, all have coalescing histories. Yeah, but I'm going to tell you something. At that event, and this was 2017, I think, 2017, fall of 2017, Institute of the Black World had a major conference in New Jersey. Farrakhan spoke, Karanga, this one, that one. Let me tell you something. There's things that go on, like no women sitting on the stage, okay? And don't nobody got a problem with that. There's things that go on in spaces.
Are they supposed to have a problem with? What you mean nobody had a problem with that?
I do. I think if you have a stage of people who are addressing issues in our community, and no women can sit on the stage with the presenters, yeah, an absence of women in an African space is always a problem. Always.
Okay, let me be okay. So
always.
that is not the experience of. I have never heard that from other Black women who have attended that.
Well, and there was over 1,000. There was over 1,000 people there. I'm familiar.
I actually did not attend that one. I actually watched it online, and I was able to watch it online because there was a Black woman there who was filming the entire thing. There was a Black woman who
was an organizer, and I was on the second row. And beside Milana Karenga's wife, who sat behind him, no other women were allowed on the stage.
Right. But did the women themselves, besides you, have a problem with that?
Excuse me?
Did the women who were sitting, because here's the thing.
Many of the women who were there had a problem with it.
Some people project onto women in the Nation of Islam. And I want to be really clear here.
This was not a Nation of Islam event.
It was not a Nation of Islam. But I'm making a point, if you allow me to finish, is that some people project oppression, right, on women in the Nation of Islam because they have a Western framework about what is supposed to be happening, according to white feminist theory or according to whoever else. But if you talk to the women themselves, that some of the women who are still in the Nation of Islam, in fact, there was a sister just recently, and I'm going to have to place this in the comments, who was a part, she's a young sister actually, is a part of the Nation of Islam, who actually did an incredible Twitter thread explaining the role of Black women in particular in the Nation of Islam to correct some of the harmful narratives, particularly from the feminist side and people who are of that ilk, projecting their own ideas on what they don't understand about the Nation of Islam. You see what I'm saying? My husband is a part of the Nation of Islam and the FOI. So maybe I have a different view than you, and that's fine. But what I'm saying is that I don't know Black women in this particular sphere, not myself. I am a very strong Black woman. I am a very type A personality, all of that. So if I want to sit on a stage, which in my mind wouldn't necessarily be that important, but if I wanted to sit on the stage, ain't nobody gonna tell me that I can't sit on the stage.
Well,
You
this is the
understand what I'm
thing.
saying?
So,
But
yeah,
I don't
I'm
see
sure.
that as important. But go ahead.
Well, let me say this. Our community is not all men and it's not all women. So yeah, I think exclusion of anybody is a problem too.
But
I
it's
don't
not
want you.
exclusion if
I
they
don't.
were at the event and you said that
Well,
they organized the event.
well, who are you saying they?
You
Because
said that women organized the event.
yeah, the actual key organizer was a woman. However, she was not. And
So
yeah,
is that oppression?
let me say this. Yes, many of the women who were
May I
there
interject? May I
Please,
interject?
please,
had a
yes.
problem with it.
May I interject?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm trying
And
not
let
to
me say this, it wasn't
interrupt.
limited to the nation. The nation has nothing to do with it, because actually the nation probably would have had more of a problem with some of the things that were going on. So the nation was present, but many other organizations that were present, okay, they probably
You know what?
were
Let
in a
me just say this
minority.
before time is up. Okay,
Okay,
I was not at that conference. Okay,
it was big.
I think that my thing is I'm not selecting anybody on the basis of gender. I don't
That's
care
right.
about your gender. That's the first thing. I had the first Emmet Till forum at the University of Missouri in a few months, maybe a month, not even a few months, a month, if not less, after my dissertation term book was published in 1994, Emmet Till, The Sacrificial Lamb of the Civil Rights Movement. There had never been a conference on Emmet Till. I had this conference, and they flew in from all over the country to be speakers at this thing that I had. They were all men. I had no one was, they were invited by me because I wanted the primary victims and the ones who would be most likely selected to be a continuum. The Emmet Till continuum, that's a term I use all the time for the last 3 decades, an Emmet Till continuum. I wanted to hear from them. So I invited the chair, the founding chair of Africana Studies Department at Ohio State University. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Nick Nelson from Memphis. That's where I'm from. I invited Tony Martin, my very good friend. From Wellesley College,
I know him too.
And Tony, I said, Tony, I can't.
He was in with us.
You can't be in it because the thing is, Friday, and you're speaking in New York, and he said, listen, I'll be the last speaker, but I've got to be there. When I get through speaking, I'm catching a flight out, so I'll be there. So Tony,
he's missed. Yeah.
I had Alvin O. Chambliss Jr., who was the lead counsel in the Ayers versus Fortis case. I had I had a whole list of my husband then, Robert Weems, economic historian, who deals with all of this stuff. He wrote the foreword to the book. Okay, that's another male. Everything up there on that panel were males, because I wanted to hear from men about what Emmet Till experienced was what another male will experience before another woman. Okay. Not saying that women weren't lynched too. We know that, but most of those who were lynched were men,
unequivocal,
and that's what I wanted to hear from. Now, I had 2 people moderating. One was a male friend of mine from University of Rhode Island. The other was a colleague of mine from Sierra Leone. She's been teaching for years after she left she was with the UN and all that for at least a decade or decade and a half. She left that to join the academy, and she's been there ever since. And this is my colleague who's at the university, Wayne State University. The one would do and one would do. They introduce the speakers. And somebody said, you don't have any women up there. I said, I am interested in hearing the passion and the feelings of men who are most likely to experience what Emmet Till experienced. Emmet whistled at a white woman.
The new terms is most impacted.
I mean, yeah. So that's why that panel was set up like that. I wasn't like, well, if I got men, I got to have women. I wasn't interested either in what the women had to say on that. So what?
Right.
It didn't matter. I wanted to hear the passion and the feelings of Black men to explain what that meant to them.
Is that okay?
And it was a powerful forum. And
listen, I've been in many spaces and made many decisions where that has come up, right? So you talk about
yeah,
committees.
it doesn't matter about men or women. In
Own
some circumstances, now, if it's a conscious, deliberate
my
exclusion of
own
women, that might be another story. And I can't address that on the conference that you were talking about because I wasn't there.
Right.
Don't exclude me because, like, they're excluded me now with all of my seminal work on Emmet Till and 4 books. Okay,
right. Look
and they're
at this.
coming out with books, later. Okay, but they're the experts. That's
I don't have a problem
silly
with that, but I do think. Listen, I think that it's 2 sides to it. If there is, when I'm looking for expertise, so my own dissertation committee was 4 men. All right, period. Malefi Asante chaired it. And I had 1 man on there who I still do work with, and he's the most principled human being I probably will ever meet in my life. And there's no way he wouldn't have been on there, be it gender or not. That being said, I think one of the issues that we definitely have in our community, particularly so I pointed that out as an example of a gathering that was, in no uncertain terms, a Black nationalist gathering. Many factions, some opposing factions, and that's a whole nother story about events that are of that proportion. You're talking about 2-3 days, and easily the last event, particularly the event I'm talking about, where there was more than 1,000 people in the room, and it was not led by the nation in any way. Farrakhan spoke, but that wasn't. Matter of fact, I would say, and I don't want to get into
I only
specifics.
brought up the nation because they've been accused of being a very sexist
well,
organization.
I wouldn't say that because actually it was a member of the nation, a brother Hafiz Muhammad, who is a very good friend of mine, who passed away this past year. If you knew, he was Farrakhan's representative in New York, who was actually on the other side of that issue at that event. So I don't know. That's why I kind of was like, no, I couldn't agree with what you were saying about the nation, because my experience with individuals like that,
and my experience as well,
that they actually are more diligent in making sure sisters are respected and recognized. So I can't. So when you're
you're not familiar with any of the hit pieces and the writings where people say that the Nation of Islam is sexist.
My experience has been different, and you have to understand. I also was married to a Muslim, so my experience around all of that is very different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about we have a very non-Muslim, if I need to say it that way, non-Islamic faction of nationalists who know Black power means Black male power, okay? And we can delve into the history of that, whether you want to deal with anybody's biography. You want to talk about Elaine Brown, even though people have criticized her. Listen, she's got her contradictions, and many will say that. However, any woman who can write about being raped in an organization that is about our liberation, we need to look at that, okay? In our community. Any woman who can be tortured, any woman who can be abused in any nationalist in organization in our community, and we not have full-on conversations about that, we need to look at that.
Black feminists have had full-on conversations. They continue, like you are now. They continue to remind us about how horrible they call them hoteps. They call them hoteps now.
Listen,
how horrible Black nationalists are, and that is just not the full picture.
No, it's not.
And even Elaine Brown, you brought up Elaine Brown. I know that I've seen some of her writings, and I think I'm actually Facebook friends with her. I have to go back and look. But I've seen some of her. Yeah, I am. And I've seen some of her writings and some of her posts actually pushing back on this overall narrative out of the university that the Black Panther Party in and of itself as a whole was this horrific sexist organization.
No, and nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. But it is an organization that the masses of the membership were women. and it is an organization
Right.
that
That's yeah.
in terms of how the imagery works, one would think that the masses of the organization were men because the men were high profile men. That being said,
Who
also
high profiled them? It
also
wasn't black people.
the men who people typically associate with the Black Panther Party were high profile men. So anybody can rattle off Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, Eldridge Cleaver. Anybody can rattle off, but people are surprised to find out that the masses, both on all sides, East and West, and in between, of the Black Panther Party were women. The rank and file masses were women. That being said, no,
That
nobody said
explains a lot.
that it was a bastion of whatever. I'm not sure the statement you made, but the point is this. Yes, there were some deep issues that went on there that allowed for the domination. Listen, rape is not about love or sex. It's about power. Make it be clear. It's about domination. It's a violent act. You don't rape anybody because you want to date them in the future. You rape them because you want to dominate them, okay, and dehumanize them. And so in an organization where the masses are women, where that can even happen, is problematic. And I don't care about what feminists have to say about what we have done historically in our organizations. I leveled the same challenges in the organization that I was in. Okay. Political organizations like the AAPRP are typically going to have more male membership. We couldn't retain women very well. We couldn't keep sisters in the party. And
well, how did the Black Panthers keep them in the party if they were?
I have no idea, because the Black Panther Party was a very different organization than a political organization.
Maybe because it wasn't. Maybe because it wasn't. Yeah, go ahead.
All African People Revolutionary Party. Have you heard of the name Regina Jennings?
No, I don't
Regina
know.
taught in Philadelphia. She finished her doctorate also at Temple. That's why I asked that question.
I don't know.
But Regina left the Philadelphia area and moved to San Francisco during that period. She was young. She hadn't gotten her all her degrees and stuff then. She was young, and she wanted to join the party. The
Which
reason
party?
we had so many women there is because they were doing what women do, and that is they were nurturing the family. They were molding character. They were making sure that the kids were fed and all those kinds of things that women routinely do anyway. You're going to take care of your children. They were there, and the men on the whole, I'm not talking about their personal lives because I haven't gotten into Black Panther Party to that extent. But I'm saying that women were more the family cohesiveness that the organization needed. They had things to do for the family. They were the
workers.
Pardon me?
They were the workers. They
did all that. Men were on the whole, for the most part, supposedly strategizing techniques for in some way trying to deal with the problems that Black people were dealing with, racism, etc. I would imagine. I'm not an expert on the Black Panther Party, but she did write an article, and I've got to look at that. It was years ago when I did a special issue for the Western Journal of Black Studies on Africana Womanism, and she actually told the personal story side of what it meant, and she talked about the fact that there was sexism. We're in a patriarchal setup. That's the way it has been. It just comes natural because that's the way it's been everywhere you go. But her thing was, and she was very, very happy to see the women there exuding the Africana womanist persona.
Absolutely.
They named, defined themselves. They were family centered. They were in concert with the males in the struggle.
Interchangeable roles, complementary.
Those women were getting together. They were respectful of them elders. For a lot of them, really, they had mothers, they had dads, or whomever. They respected those elders. They were mothering and nurturing without apology. They were flexible role players. If the men were not available to do things that you usually assign to men, the heavy duty work, like you said, anyway you look at it, there's a difference in the biology between men and women. And I'm the same way. I'm not interested in picking up all that heavy stuff. If I can get away with it, you do it. I enjoy doing what
But see,
what I saw women in my community doing, and that is taking care of the family. They had careers too. That's your choice. But at the same time, they never ignored the children and their needs. I look at Toni Morrison as a model for me. When she and her husband divorced, she took care of those boys. Those two boys were hers, her responsibility. She didn't just say, okay, I'm a career woman, I ain't got time for you. She was still a mother 24/7. And she wove that other part into the overall picture or the overall assignment that she had as a person, a human being. So she was a career woman, but she was a mother, I think, first and foremost. So that's what Regina did. She looked at the Africana Womanist elements in those women who were there, and they were good. They were good. They were working with those kids. They were tutoring them. They needed tutoring, feeding them, talking to them when they were afraid or having problems, all those things. And of course, supporting those men too. We don't know what private conversations are about, but a lot of times those women would tell the men what they thought would be a better option, a better strategy for making things better. So they weren't ignored totally. Not quite frankly, if I were in the Black Panther Party back then, I wouldn't have wanted the upfront position. I personally wouldn't have. I would have said, going out there, you do it. I'm going to tell you what might be better. Okay, that's the way I would be. Because there was a lot of risk there. Look at what happened to Fred Hampton.
Exactly.
His wife was, and I had his son to come here, introduce himself to me, want to talk to my class. I said, of course. This is about a decade ago. But the woman was carrying him at the time when they burst in their home and shot him right there in his bed, sleeping. Just shot him up, killed him. He was just 21 years old.
Right.
So I'm saying that, no, I want you. It's like this here. I tell a guy, if there's a big old dog that jumps out and you push me in the front, we don't have a relationship anymore. Excuse me. If you scared of that dog, you better pretend you're not. Because you better get up there and keep that dog off me. But you better protect me. That's what I expect.
Oh, feminists don't like that, Dr.
I don't care. I'm not a feminist. I am not interested
but this is
in what they want and what they respect. I have never
wanted to
be a feminist.
That's
but look at this. Let me tell you, and I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
Black men. I remember going. I had a little British needle at the time. I was coming from the grocery store. I didn't have time to go to the grocery store I'm like them. I'm not like the New Yorkers go to the store every other day. I go to the store once every 2 weeks. So I'm taking the stuff out of my little British needle, and I'm kind of struggling. And the guy walks with me. He said, "Oh, excuse me, but could I help you?" I said, "Oh, please do. Thank you so much."
Some sisters are cuss men out these days about asking to help.
Did I ask you? I mean, I'm not exactly an invalid. Oh, yes. I'm telling you, flexible role players. I used to go out and help my husband rake the leaves for 5 minutes. When it got hot, I'm done with it. You keep that. Okay? When it comes to snow, my daughter and I go play for 5 minutes. When it gets too cold, goodbye. You keep scraping that doggone thing out there. I am more of the domestic component of this makeup. I love cooking. I keep an immaculate home. That's the way I am. I want to talk to my daughter. If you're busy doing that, that's fine. So I would say that if in fact that's representative of how it is in reference to a man trying to protect his family, he would be in the forefront. Don't put me up there to say all that stuff and be a target. You be the man and you be it. I like it just like.
I don't think that was the case in the Black Panther Party. I don't think, because they do talk about interchangeable roles, right? So men cooking
and complementary roles,
right? Complementary, but interchangeable, working in concert with each other. So they definitely try to implement those things. But my point of mentioning the Black Panther Party is that, let's be very clear. If we were to say in terms of the numbers, it was certainly more of a woman's organization, even though we look at it as an associated with as male dominated.
They are looking at the leaders. No, it's not male dominated. It's the leadership. There is nothing wrong with the men being in leadership of an organization.
They founded the organization. What's wrong with that?
Yes, nobody said anything is wrong with it. Point is that the perception is that it was not a male or woman. anybody. That would be a surprise to anybody to understand the numerical breakdown of the Black Panther Party, that the masses were.
I guess I'm trying to understand what is your point.
No,
with
I'm
this?
not surprised. Okay. I know what you mean. The males were the leaders. Okay. Absolutely. I don't have a problem with that, because number one is that was an organization, and it was dangerous.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be in the forefront. Please spare me.
Clear.
But because of the fact that the women had a one-on-one relationship with the children, there were a lot of kids,
and the men did.
So of course there were more women. There were more women in there than men. There are always more followers and activists than the leaders. That's always been the case. You know, so if the leadership is dominated by the males, I think that's the way probably it should have been, because you're talking about that particular time. Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't want to be in leadership there. Not with that. Not during those times.
Well,
and even today, I'm not interested in being the so-called leader of everything.
Well, let's be clear. The leadership of the Black Panther Party was shared.
Yeah.
Huey Newton was the chairman, and then Elaine Brown was the chairman. That's probably not a well-known fact.
That's okay.
So they had a man and a woman chairman at different times. My point of just bringing that up.
So then, how are they sexist? This is so contradictory.
Who said? Okay, okay, I'm not sure what you're saying is sexist.
What's so sexist? They had. Come back, Dr. Tyreen. I want to understand. You are making the point that the Black Panther Party was majority women. Then you said they had shared leadership. What is your point about the Black Panther Party?
My point is, when we talk about nationalist organizations, overwhelmingly the image of the pursuit of Black power is a very male-dominated movement. Okay? That in and of itself, the idea of Black power invokes a masculine idea. We would not.
That's an assumption.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Not an assumption, because if you look at this is a period that I've done in-depth study of, and know the people. So it's not an assumption. When we delve into, that's just
how do you know everybody's perception?
Let me just say this here. Let's just say this here. Look at the civil. Let's just say this here.
Delve into the civil rights movement.
I was going to say, let us talk about the civil rights movement, for example.
Very male visible.
Male domination, if you want to call it. Male leadership, like Dr. King. Who are the ones that get shot first? Aren't they the ones that's supposed to protect us? I want to be protected, quite frankly. I'm simply saying that, no. What I'm saying is that this whole thing of a leadership, we talk about SNCC and the blacks who are in leadership, but then there was the mother, Baker. She was the one that they came to, who nurtured and trained them and gave them advice as to what they needed to do.
Baker's difference with Dr. King, it was not about feminism or him being a man.
No,
her difference was a class issue, if we want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. They were not interested in women being equal to, in that sense, leadership with the men.
Let me say this.
A lot of women didn't even care about that. All they wanted to make sure is that the job got done.
They wanted
to get beyond what the limitations that they were forcing on us.
Let me be so it's funny, because I've actually taught a whole class on African American women leadership in the civil rights movement. Let me just say this. I don't know that Ella Baker cared about that, but her direct position on it, because she writes about it, her direct position on it was that she had surrendered her ego. And Ella Baker spoke in depth and wrote in depth about why she leaves the civil rights movement and her relationship. And she doesn't name him because she doesn't want to do that, but her relationship to people like King. She may not have cared about power, okay? And I don't think that she did. But she certainly didn't agree with the marginalization. I'm trying to connect myself because I'm about to get cut off. She did not, she may not have cared about power. Can you all hear me? You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
She may have not cared about power, and she didn't, because she was actually the person first of all, Ella Baker was the national organizer before King was even well known.
Absolutely.
Okay, so she was
Yes.
doing that. But this is a perfect case study and example of what I'm saying. Okay, civil rights movement. Sure, many men involved. King comes in and insists that his visible people be men. And listen, I learned this as an 18-year-old at Tuskegee. If you want to read about it, read Cone's book, Malcolm and Martin. Few people knew King's position on women. And yes, he did have a position on women. I don't agree with this thing where we try to make our men saints and angels. They're human. They got contradictions. That being
Who's doing
said,
that?
hold on. Let me just explain.
I'm asking you, who's making the men saints and angels? Are we making the black women saints and angels?
And in general, we tend to do that. But let me say this. He had contradictions that he wrote about and that he talked about, and he made the protocol. I had the unusual opportunity to be very close to someone who is in their family and wrote on some of these issues. That being said, King did have issues with women. Okay, he was very clear about it behind the scenes that he would not share visible leadership with any woman. Okay, it is a perfect case study of these kind of contradictions within our community as we are struggling for our collective liberation and rights. We have our men who are still in those same positions and in leadership positions who have contradictions that say, I am not going to share any leadership role, and women are not going to be anything but subordinates and worker bees in this space. Okay. And that was his clear position. It's very clearly revealed in all the documentation. And I want to give contrast to Malcolm because I think it's a very interesting contrast in comparison to what you had previously said about Muslims. I think it was just the opposite of what people might have thought publicly. That being said, Ella Baker, yes, she did part ways with King because of some of these very issues. How she talks about it is as she never wanted the limelight. She was always invested in the people and the change that they could make. She didn't have that. And she talks about it as surrendering her ego. Okay? Just those exact words. That's in contrast to King, in spite of all his sacrifices, largely being a slave of his ego in the sense that he needed to be visible and he needed to say, I don't want and I will not have any woman in leadership. Maya Angelou also writes about this. Very interesting because you know that she puts her autobiography in a series of books. The second to last autobiography she writes about her life, she chronicles that moment in time where she is in Ghana. And she's in Ghana around the same time that Malcolm is there at one time. And she's there and she coalesces with him. He comes back to the States, gets killed. But she did do work with Malcolm. And she writes about all of this in her autobiography. That being said, she always wanted to work with Martin Luther King. And she writes about it. She had the opportunity to work with Malcolm because Malcolm had no such idea that he would not work with a woman in a leadership position. So as far as that commentary about Muslims, I don't know.
Martin Luther King is a black nationalist now?
Most of the Muslims that I know are very much like Malcolm. But Malcolm had worked with Maya Angelou and the gender issue was never a problem. King had openly refused to work with women in a leadership position. He had refused to work with her in the past. And on this occasion, which is kind of like a highlight in her book, she's writing about the fact that he just wrote to her and said, I will work with you. He comes to that, and he does come full circle. So nobody should take that away from him, King, that he had that issue and he comes full circle and starts to resolve that towards the end of his life. He writes her and says that, when are you coming back to the States? I will work with you. And she proceeds to come back to the States. Just before she gets back, he is murdered. That being said, my point is that yes, we have organization, and I would consider, no, I don't consider the civil rights movement. Dr. Weems brought us over to that, but they are in contrast to each other, or they are parallel to each other in the sense that you have the Black nationalist movement and then you have the civil rights movement, both of which have had serious issues around the status and the position and the role of women. Okay. And yes, very much so, what they have in common is that women are very visible, very much in the masses in the civil rights movement. Women are very much in the masses in the nationalist, particularly Black Panther movement. However, they are not visible. They are the rank and file, and I wouldn't even relegate them always to just being the worker bees, because you have them in leadership, you have them in decision-making positions. They just are not visible in that way. And yes, the third thing I'm saying is you very likely have men in those spaces who were just like King, who would say, I'm not sharing this space in a visible way or even in any active way. So you don't have to be visibly the leader in order to be doing leadership, playing a leadership role. What King distinctively said in his context is, no women are making decisions here. That's very clear and well documented. Okay. And many people challenge that, like, hey, how could you be fighting for civil rights and then you still have this inclination to make this distinction within our group, within our people, that women are not to be on par or on the same level as men? That part right there, to me, and I don't know if this is clear in this conversation, but I think my observations lead me to believe that that issue still exists, both in the what would you say, the secular struggles and the nationalist struggles. I see that evidence of that in both spaces. And yes, we do have to deal with it. To say that, oh, well, no, these men, that's not what they're up to or whatever. They have those contradictions. The point and the problem is this: women have to understand, yes, we do have to organize and agree to engage in active struggle with our men. Challenge those contradictions. And that's one of the things. I'm not in the AAPRP anymore, but that's one of the things, is absolutely the formula. The brothers in that organization who were educated on what sexism is, how they are the active agents of
Can
sexism.
I say something right now? Let me just say this. Quite frankly, I'm getting tired, because my thing on Africana Womanism is the prioritization of race, class, and gender.
Absolutely.
We have spent too much time talking about gender disparities. I'm tired of it. Number one is we have a racial monster that we are dealing with 24/7, 390 days a year. And we're talking about gender.
Right.
I'm sick of that. There's enough people already talking about gender. Let them have it. I thought we were going to be talking about race first, class second, because there we take some money too. We need it. And then we can talk about gender when we have time. I can't spend hours talking about gender disparity. I'm not interested.
Listen.
There's enough folk out there, too many already talking about that.
Well, I'm
still Black, and I want to talk about that thing that Black men and Black women have in common, and that is racial oppression. Excuse me. I'm done.
Absolutely. But this is the other part of it, Dr. Weems. Charshi McIntyre talks about this same thing. How do we struggle against the beast or this monster without becoming that monster? Okay? Meaning, while we are struggling against oppression, how do we not become like our oppressors? And that's a very real thing within our communities. Absolutely. It's both of our responsibilities.
You know what? I'm like this here.
It's both of our responsibilities.
I love to cook. I tell people this. I love to cook and all those kinds of things. But my husband comes home. He would come home. He didn't. He didn't come home. Well, where's dinner? Do you smell it? If you don't smell it, it's not cooking. Obviously, because I cook well. You'll know it when you hit the door. Your question is, where you want to eat today? Where you want to go? That's the way we lived. It was perfect. So I'm saying that I'm the last person to lie down and let somebody walk on me. King said nobody's gonna walk on me unless you lie down. I'm not doing that. But at the same time, I haven't got to debate this stuff about gender disparity for 24/7 to make any sense of anything. And I'm as black as anything I'll ever get. I want to talk about racial discrimination first and foremost. I want to talk about saving our children. I want to talk about making sure our men understand that we are in it together.
It's like the black on black crime argument. It's like, and I know black people say, well, we can't talk about white folks murdering us if we don't talk about how we kill ourselves. And I think that is the most regressive kind of argument. And I hear it a lot.
Right.
People will be like, well, I don't want to talk about Black Lives Matter because we got black on black crime.
Yeah,
or I don't want to talk about black this and black. And to me, the feminist argument or this argument that Dr. Wright is making is similar in the same way. Is that we don't want to talk about racial oppression because we really want to talk about what the black on black crime is.
Well, wait, hold on. I'm not going to let you reframe the conversation.
I'm telling you what I hear, sister. I'm not reframing it. I'm telling you what I'm listening. I've been listening to you for 30 minutes. We both have.
You're reframing the conversation to say that I think that our oppression within put us in this space. No, absolutely not.
I didn't say that.
Okay. Well, you're saying
no. I said it's a black on black crime argument.
Absolutely not. No, it's not.
That's what I'm hearing.
Because we know about proximity, don't we? Don't you? You know about proximity, right? So we have access to each other. That nobody is delusional enough in this conversation, and I actually take exception to that, saying that I believe black on black crime equates to what we experience within our community. Not at all.
I can only tell you what I'm hearing. Dr. Hudson-Weems and I have been sitting listening to you talk about 20 to 30 minutes, and that's what you've talked about is the intra-community, the black on black crime.
No, I didn't talk about black on black crime. I don't know where you got that from. My point is that the same issues that we
I am telling you what I hear. Okay, the same people who make black on black crime arguments.
Let me rephrase.
Say the same things that you are saying. And again, the crime that happens in our community, like what you're talking about, it is real, right? It's real. But we're not taught. But what I have an issue with is the framing of it. And we're not getting, like Dr. Hudson-Weems said, like how Dr. Hudson-Weems said, we're not getting to the issue where we're trying to heal. How long are we going to talk about what happened in the civil rights movement? How long are we going to talk about what happened in all of these black nationalist organizations and other things like that? There are certain people, and I know you don't agree when it comes to the NOI, but the NOI is the largest black nationalist organization in this country.
Where do you?
The Nation of Islam is the largest black nationalist organization in this country.
Right.
Facts.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, when you were first bringing that up, because you brought up the Institute of the Black Word with Ron Daniels, I'm familiar with him. So are you referring to him as being a sexist?
I don't know anything about him personally. What I'm saying to you is that, yes, at that mass event, because I'm not into personality worship, so I know all the same people you do too, and you know as well. That being said, yes, myself, many other sisters who were there in front and center, had some criticism of how things went. And matter of fact, I don't know where you get saying I think the nation. Matter of fact,
I didn't say that. You use the term black nationalists very broad.
But they're not the only black nationalist organization.
They're not the only. They're just the largest. So I wanted to be clear.
I'm not talking about the nation.
To be clear that we weren't talking about the nation.
We should have people on the nation here because matter of fact.
Oh, my husband is downstairs. He is a Nation of Islam FOI.
I have some of the best relationships with people from the nation. And matter of fact, so you know the nation, so you should know that Hafiz Muhammad is one of the people who is not supportive of some of the things that are expressed in our spaces. between us that are anti, or I don't even know if you would say anti-woman, but negates women. Okay, so I don't know.
Let me be clear before we wrap this up. Let me be clear before we wrap up this portion. I want to be really clear before we wrap up this portion, because Dr. Hudson-Weems is the elder on here, and she done said she's tired. So I want to wrap this part up. Okay.
No, I don't mean I'm physically tired. I mean that I don't want to.
I know you're tired of this conversation, but I guess I'm struggling to figure out how we got on this, but I mean, but I want to make sure I tightly wrap this up, because I do think it's important that we talk about this. And I think the sister made some very important points on some of the things that we do need to deal with within the community. I think the issue that I have with that is that there seems to be that kind of tactic happens every time we talk about global kind of like white supremacy, racism, and white domination, and how it influences some of the so-called pathological behaviors that we see within the community. However, I wanted to make sure I understood your point, Dr. Tyreen Wright, because this is great. I think that you and people in the comments have been supportive of some of the things that you said, some not supportive, but that's fine. What I'm saying is that, were you bringing up the point about sexism insofar as there wasn't a shared leadership role within Black Nationals Organization?
No, let me give you some understanding of my background. So I come from a political background where, yes, within our communities, in terms of developing ourselves, these are some of the issues we must attack within, okay? Women work on issues that exist within our community that are specific to women. And I don't have a problem with that. That's why I have no problem with my previous affiliation, which had a woman's wing. Yes, we have a particular form of oppression that impacts us. That's called, these ladies are calling it intersectionality. I don't call it that. I call it triple oppression. And that's here in the United States. That's on the continent of Africa. That's wherever you find African women. We experience triple oppression. We have a responsibility as African women.
You don't think Black men experience a particular oppression based on gender?
Based on gender? I don't know anything about being a man, so I can't tell you that. I know about being a woman.
I mean, but you study research.
Community. Excuse me?
You study research and you study numbers.
Yeah, you said, do Black men experience?
I said not men. I was very specific. I said, do Black men experience oppression that is gendered?
Of course. In this society, yes. We look at the prison industrial complex, right? Okay, but we also know the fastest growing group of incarcerated persons is who? Black women, okay? And that is racialized, as opposed, because I can go the other way with what you're saying, which is this. When many of our men say, well, it's Black men that are oppressed, I often say, no, it's Black people. What are you talking about? It's Black men Black men, women, and children are oppressed. And Black women will make more Black babies, and Black men will make more Black babies. So I don't think that yes, there is oppression because women are oppressed. In our communities that are already oppressed, there's another layer. And yes, politically, we have to recognize that men oppress women regardless of a larger oppressive society. So when we get to that work in our community, we've got to be mindful not to play the role of the oppressors in our community. And that's with or without a system. That being said, I don't think that's anything comparable to saying, well, hey, we're not going to talk about systematic oppression, racism, which is a fictitious construct, because we've got Black on Black crime. So I want to be clear. That is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we got some work to do within. Absolutely. Because
I made that clear. I said that we definitely have work. We need healing. We need all of that. And I think that's what we're trying to wrap it up. One of the questioners asked in the comment, they wanted to hear from Dr. Hudson-Weems in terms of they wanted to hear from you about race and class specifically, because we spent so much time talking about gender.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I like to talk about. Race first, always.
I am race first. I'm
Once,
a race
Right.
first Black woman, unapologetically.
once
African
we can
first.
resolve that, we can have time deal with that, and with that almost intertwined race class. You see the interesting thing about that. We
Right.
know that we have to have economics. We have to have economic parity, obviously. So if you're talking about racism, you're talking about economics too. They're interconnected. You can't
Right.
talk about one without the other. They're going to keep us down financially. That's racism. You can't separate the two, quite frankly. They come hand in hand. You know, it's like, for example, when we were brought here, they brought us here to exploit us, to
Absolutely.
make us work for
Commodities.
them free. It's economic exploitation. That's what slavery was all about. Economic exploitation. But over the years,
Commodities.
over the centuries, with a white man, for example, going back to slavery, trying to justify why he's oppressing, why he's enslaving blacks. Well, you know, somebody's got to feed them. You know, somebody's got to take care of black folk and make sure they have food and they have clothes and all that kind of stuff. That was the slave owner's justification of what he was doing. So in actuality, the whole thing, while it started off with racism, with classism, racism became the parent. It's interesting because it's the biggest monster now. It started off economic. Of course, we know that the money is still being held from us.
Oh, it's
but
definitely,
it's all like that race thing. They can identify and they can justify and they can completely relegate us on the basis of our race. That's why we have to talk about race first. And right behind that, it's just like Sojourner Truth's oration in 53 in Ohio. Okay. When she does that oration,
Can you do anything about that, Zakia?
And on our woman,
she's not breaking up for me. I can hear her.
Okay.
Listen, and on our woman, and that's exactly what she's saying. She is an Africana womanist who talks about the race factor first.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Right.
and then she says, and then of course, you know, you say that women's supposed to have all these beautiful things and best place everywhere. Nobody ever gave me that. It ain't our woman. The resounding question.
Absolutely.
She is relegated and ostracized and discriminated against and held back from those beautiful things because she's black. It starts off with the race. It's not until she gets towards the end of the oration that she addresses the absurdity of female subjugation before she can begin to think, let alone articulate this whole notion of the absurdity of female subjugation. She has to get beyond the race factor first. I'm a human being, and ain't I a woman? I deserve a place, and ain't I a woman? Then we can talk about the gender. I'm simply saying that we aren't there now that we can focus on the gender. We have no right as black people to spend all our time talking about gender differences. We need to talk about the race factor first.
Right.
We are losing our babies. These Emmet Till continuums are because of racism. I want to talk about that.
Right.
That's what I want to spend 2.5 hours talking about. I'm not interested in talking about no gender. Hey, I know how to deal with people when it comes to gender.
I know how to deal with the black man.
And I think the average black woman can if she wants to. Stop acting like you need somebody to help you to deal with this gender factor. You're not Betty Friedan. You're not Betty Friedan. Are you hearing me? You're not Betty Friedan, who wrote The Feminist Mystique. You're not talking about all those things. And I love the way she just outlined that thing in Betty Friedan. I'm just going to read it and show you how absurd it is. In the third chapter of my book, and it's both the one that just came out, and which is a reprint of the 1993. Here it is, 2019. It comes out. And what she says here, I love it. She says here, third chapter is very important. Feminist Mystique. This is Betty Friedan. Makes it very clear. There's a strange stirring. This is a white woman in Chicago suburbia. She's tired of being relegated to what what's her name, Sylvia Ann Hewlett calls in her book A Lesser Life, feeble-minded chores for 8-year-olds. I don't consider myself engaging in female-minded chores for 8-year-olds when I'm a mother. Excuse me, when I'm a wife and I enjoy cooking for my husband, he enjoys it more than anybody else's food. Strange stirring, a sense of dissatisfaction, a yearning that women suffered in the middle of the 20th century in the United States. Each suburban wife struggled with it alone as she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover materials, ate peanut butter sandwiches with the children, chauffeured Cub Scouts and brownies, lay beside her husband at night. She was afraid to ask even of herself the silent question, is this all? We are not afraid. If I worked all day and cooked and all this stuff, and you come home and you spend 5 minutes eating, and then that's the end of it, I don't have time for you, and somebody got to go. And we don't have we don't have a problem saying, excuse me, honey, but if this is all I can expect out of this relationship, I'm done with it. Black women know how to deal with that. Don't tell me about no sexism in your home. You need to deal with it. And if you can't deal with it, you call me up after hours and I'll tell you how to deal with it. Okay.
Right.
But the main thing is I'm trying to deal with how do we deal with the monsters out there who are taking advantage of us as a black people.
And they're doing
that's what I want to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's what I want to deal with. Don't leave us don't alienate us from our men folk to say they are nobody. They are nobody. And it's these damn men. That's what we don't have a problem with you, Clenora. It's these damn black men. You talking about my damn daddy, if you want to call him damn. You talking about my husband. You talking about my brothers. You talking about my cousins. Don't talk to me about that. You don't know who I am. You can't talk about them like that. Expect me to dismiss them. Those are people I love. I'm here to work with them. I am their other part. Okay. And we have to understand that. That's why I wrote that poem, I Got Your Back, Boo. The first line said, don't you know by now, girl, we're all in this together. Family centrality. That's it. We're going nowhere without the other. That means the men, the women, and the children too. Truly collectively working. I got your back, boo. We gotta have each other's back and stop playing games. We gotta stop playing games.
Can we leave the audience with the tenants? Did you hear me?
Pardon me?
Can we leave the audience with the tenants?
Oh, yes. Okay. The 18 characteristics of the African.
We are talking about
yes.
The
18. Honey, I'm ready for it. The 18 characteristics of the Africana Womanist. Okay. First of all, we are self-namers and we are self-definers. We name ourselves no more. It's the proper naming of a thing. That's why I will not let you call me a feminist, because that's not who I am. I am not a feminist. It is not about gender exclusivity. It's not about trying to pick up on what Africana Womanism has been doing for 3 decades. Now, all of a sudden, with the last couple of decades, you've been talking about this whole intersectionality as if black women and black men haven't been doing that whole thing of race, class, and gender, but in a different way of interconnecting. It was what I've been calling since the 80s, interconnectiveness, not intersectionality, because we come together and we're coming together to stay together. Intersectionality means you come together, you start, and then at some point you branch off and you focus on this, and then you focus on that, and then maybe you come back together. We don't have to separate. We're like woven fabric. We stay together. We come together, we are interconnected, and we work together. And we're going to stay that way as long as we have breath, if we have any sense at all. Because there is no way we could have survived slavery if we didn't stick together. You know that as well as I know. So why are we playing those games? So we name ourselves properly. I don't name myself after somebody else. And when you think about the venomous beginnings of feminism, excuse me, and I'm going to name myself after that? Oh, no way. I will name myself. Because if you don't, somebody else will, and they would do a bad job at it. And by that time you try to fix it up, it's too late. Everybody already decided who you are because you accepted that as who you are. We define ourselves. Toni Morrison in her Beloved says definitions belonged to the definers. Those are the whites, not the defined. We were defined. That was during slavery. Hey, it's past time for that. It's a century. It's not that many centuries, but during the slavery when it started, yes. It's time for us to focus on ourselves. Name and define ourselves. We are family-centered. We're family-centered. We are not gender exclusive. We're not just flowing in race, class, and gender because that'll help us get more people to join us. We've been race, class, and gender from the beginning. Always will be. We're in concert with the males in the struggle. That's what you see with those movements that you've been talking about. There's been some collectiveness going on, and we have to appreciate that. Not just try to find the bad part of it. Look at the good part of it. We all had roles to play, and we played them well. Let's keep doing that. In it together, that we are genuine in sisterhood. We need to understand that we need each other, sisters, to help say, maybe we should do it like this. Maybe we should do it like that. Because you know how we sisters are. We get to tell me, if you really got a friend and somebody's mistreating your friend, you cry harder than her. Now what we going to do? Then what happened? You know, we are like that because we love each other. We're like that. You need somebody to take care of the kids while you go to job early because your husband doesn't get home until whatever. I got your back, boo. That's sisterhood. That's sisterhood. We have to appreciate it. We're strong emotionally, psychologically, as well as physically. We all that because it took that to make us what? Get through what we've gone through.
That's right.
That we are respectful. That first of all, we're respectful of elders. We need to appreciate that because too many people have started disrespecting elders, robbing them, hitting them in the head, or doing whatever, and that's ludicrous because they paved the way
That's ludicrous
for us. That we are certainly flexible role players. We have to be that. You know, the male, it may not be here to do this or whatever. If my husband had to go, ex-husband, if he had to go to a conference, you think I'm not going to empty the garbage because he's away and the house starts stinking? Excuse me, I get muscles. But when he's around, honey, that's you. Go do it. I'm doing the other that I love to do. And you enjoy it. You enjoy my cooking. You enjoy the pristine house. Like he said, one thing I like about you, all the stuff that you buy is for all of us to enjoy. I'm family centered. You know, that we have to that we ask and that we demand respect. We should. I don't want anybody disrespecting me, period.
That's
right. What we don't understand, sisters, is that in the same breath that you're talking about black men, you know, they they don't know how to respect women. You know, they're just dogs. But, you know, they need to respect. I said, excuse me, you gonna call him a dog and you're asking for respect? Are you serious?
Well,
if you want some respect, you better heave up some. You got to heave up some. You can't be asking somebody to respect you while you relegating them to an animal. You must be crazy. It's a two-way street. I respect you and you respect me back. That's the way that's supposed to go.
Balance. Absolutely.
Of course. And that, you know, we don't have to have a separate space like some of these other women have had to have. Like, say, for example, Virginia Woolf talks about a room of one's own. I don't need no separate room. When the kids are out the way, hey, this kitchen table, if we don't have a study, it's the study now. It's the desk. Simple as that.
Some of us ain't got no choice because of the class factor. That's all we can afford.
That's right. Exactly. We have to appreciate that, love each other, appreciate that. There's some spirituality going on there too. I don't care what your religion is, that's your business. But I'm simply saying that you have to know that there's something bigger than us that's operating.
Yes.
And these folks that's in this new age, you know, I just say I feel sorry for you because in the end, when he decides that's it, that's gonna be it, and you're gonna be left outside. The non-belief. So
I cannot believe I'm bringing in the new year with y'all. We done almost brought in the new year.
That we are. I'm getting through with these 18 characteristics.
I can't even.
Okay, I'm gonna let you get through. We're gonna wrap up.
25.
That we are adaptable. You know.
Well, it's been intense. And
we're not forced. We can't just always deal with the so-called prescription that to be a man you got to be the breadwinner 24/7. Listen, sometimes that's not the case.
It's not the case, especially now.
Well, and that's never.
There are times when, like I've known the time. Once upon a time, I knew that my mother was making the money because my daddy couldn't at that particular point. He makes it when it's possible. He had a good job. He was an inspector with Illinois Central Railroad. That was his job. He was it.
Right.
But you know how last hired, first fired syndrome?
That's
or
it.
Layoff or whatever. My mother and my daddy, all of a sudden, he could fry the chicken. You know.
That's right.
Bread, do whatever.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. So stop saying, I don't need, if he ain't got this and that, I can do good all by myself. But go on and do good all by yourself. If that's the way you want to be, go on and do good all by yourself. At some point, you're going to get tired of doing good all by yourself. You need somebody.
I went through it.
You need somebody that you can talk to, So we need to stop playing those games with each other. There are 18 characteristics of Africana Womanism, and I have them all laid out so beautifully in this book. You see here?
Yes, ma'am.
There it is. You see that globe down there? All those things that I just talked about, they are right there. Recognized and respected. It's reciprocal. Just remember
That's
that.
right. Reciprocity.
Ambitious, it took two to tango.
That's right.
It took two to tango. It takes two to tango. Do whatever. I'm working, you working, we do whatever we have to do. In the end, women, and this describes what was happening in the Black Panther Party. Women are by very nature. We are the culture bearers. We have a responsibility to uphold the health of our children, of our families, to make sure that we mother and we nurture them properly. Because if you don't do it, I like to know who you think is going to do it.
Well,
you have a responsibility. You brought them here, and you have a responsibility to make sure that they are taken care of, so that they can grow up as good human beings who will do the same thing you've done. When they bring their kids here, they're going to want to do the same thing, nurture and properly take care of them, so they can be strong enough to say yay and nay. If somebody's disrespecting them, abusing them, they're destroying their lives or whatever, they can say, hey, you know as well as I know, this is not right, and I'm not going to lie down on my back and let you continue to step on me. We got to be strong enough to say, no, enough is enough.
That's right. That's right.
Those are the 18 characteristics of Africana Womanism. All in this marvelous little book, because people don't want to tell you about Africana Womanism.
Right.
You talked about, you see that they had this thing, the Black Feminist Revisionist Project, and Valencia talks about that, right?
Yeah, that I brought it up earlier. You must have missed it. Yeah, Valencia, she goes in.
And she talks about my work.
I was surprised you hadn't read that, Dr. Wright.
Well,
no, I had it, but I've heard of it, but no.
In this book
earlier today before this.
Yeah, in the second book, Africana Woman's Literary Theory, my second book, she says, despite the magnitude and scope of the Black Feminist Revisionist Project, it has gone virtually unchallenged, and it has been met
unchallenged. Yes,
by and large.
But see, that's what we didn't talk
African-centered scholars.
Collins, her
she says one notable exception to our complicity, of course, with the project through our silence has been the. Oh, have I lost you?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. She says one exception. She says the commentary written by Clenora, who contends that this revisionist process of inappropriately labeling African women is both arbitrary and capricious. Right. Similarly, she argues, meaning myself, that a feminist procrastinating agenda de-emphasizes and recasts the primary concerns of African women of African descent of the mid-19th and early 20th century. According to Hudson-Weems, the primary concern of the women and men of this era was the life-threatening plight of Africana people, male and female, and we're still dealing with it. Listen here. Black feminist revisionism changes this focus into a narrow feminist concern, which prioritizes the plight of women as delinked and somehow different from the conditions of men in their community. Men and women, Black men and women, have the same concern, and that is for the liberation of their people and for the continuation of that lineage that they have set forth for their future generations through their children. It starts there and it continues. We have to make sure that happens. We cannot waste our time. Okay.
Well, this program is an intervention, Dr. Hudson-Weems, and I am indebted to Dr. Wright for including you and reaching out to you to be a part of this conversation. This entire discussion is an intervention into the revisionist project that is currently running rampant in our community.
I know.
It is completely running rampant
for us. I mean,
it does nothing for us. And we can see it in the material. Black feminism has not improved the material conditions of Black women in our community.
They claim all women, traditionally, they claim all women as feminists on the basis of gender. Excuse me.
Right.
So you're Black, and so you're independent, so you speak out, so you got a job, you got a career. That means you're a feminist. Who said that? No, I'm not a feminist. I am an Africana womanist, named and defined by us, not by you, not by the other. I know what my priorities are: race, class, and gender. So I know what my issues are as defined in the 18 characteristics, and so we go from there.
Right.
Yes. Well, this has been great.
Going forward to young women who think that to be a woman means to be a Black woman, and be Black and be a woman automatically means they're feminist. What do we say going forward?
We say obviously, my darling, you haven't heard of Africana Womanism.
Absolutely.
I always say that.
All I got to tell you to do is just Google the name Clenora. Before you finish Clenora, it'll be all. Just start CLE and it's gonna jump up on the computer. It'll show you the Wikipedia, Clenora Hudson-Weems. It'll show you Africana Womanism Wikipedia. It will show you all
YouTube
my books. There's a whole thing on all my books. I deal with both sides of the coin.
That's right. You have
Womanism and Emmet Till.
Yes.
Because I am the definitive Emmet Till scholar. I don't care what anybody says, because back in the 80s, 85, they weren't talking about Emmet Till. He's been dead and buried for 33 years. Nobody wanted to talk about him.
Right.
I did that. And risk a PhD. When I told my dissertation, when they said, what happens if you can't defend a dissertation? I said, simple, I don't get a PhD, and I'm willing to take that chance. Can't you just say that it was a significant factor in the rise of the movement? I said, why should I? When he was far more than that. He was the impetus.
And we didn't even get into that, how the Academy censors real Black scholarship, and how many young Black scholars who want that PhD so bad that they do change the focus of what they want to focus on. I have heard it.
I know. I told him I was the only Ford fellow in the state of Iowa. I was a national Ford fellow. Okay. I knew what I wanted to write on, and nobody could change me. If we can't write, if I couldn't write it on there, then it's sayonara. I'll go to a school that's ready to accept it. Because
you know who else? You know what other Black woman did that? The sister, Dr. Joy DeGruy. She had to jump around schools to get her PhD for the same reason.
I didn't have to move on. They decided that they were going to go for it. I was not playing. I had 2 degrees in British literature. Okay. I know it well, and that's fine. But I never stopped being Black. That's my thing. I never stopped being Black. That's who I am. But my thing is, they have taken my stuff and run away with it like they're the experts on something I did an almost 400-page dissertation on. It is thorough. I don't have to tell you anything. Get the book, go somewhere, find it or whatever, and then tell me, are they saying anything new? No.
Right.
I know it all, and I got it all when some of the people were still alive to tell me all, okay?
Right.
But they're getting the secondary stuff, and they're getting so-called experts on the outside who don't even understand what it is to be Black.
Right. Well, that's unfortunately, that's going to have to be a conversation for another day, because we see that a lot. There's a lot of people that's kind of lifted up in our community as experts on race and things like that. And I won't name any names because I don't want to be seen as
it's so sad.
But we know who they are. We know who they are. And these are the ones that get all the funding and all these different kind of things to put out all these, and they keep up the divisiveness. I feel like we haven't. We talked about a little bit some of the things we see on Twitter, and I was disappointed. You brought up Dr. Wright about Tamika Mallory. I was very disappointed in that comment for her. Yeah. But that's her position. And that's the way she believes. That's not my experience. That's not what I believe. And that's
race first. Let me just say this: we're all human beings. Mm-hmm. We all err.
Right.
Today is almost 2021.
2021.
Okay.
And Black people's conditions, Black people's conditions continue to deteriorate, and we up here fighting over gender, and we all get ready.
I don't think. Listen, we're not fighting over gender.
let me just say this one.
We're
Let
talking
me
about
No,
what
not weird. I'm talking about just in the sphere. Like, yeah,
right,
let me
that's who
tell
got
you.
power
Let me
right
say
now.
this one thing. We have got to open up. We've got to open up and talk to people in general. We have to.
Yeah.
We got to start insisting. I wrote a chapter, an article for the newspaper this summer, in which I talked about the civil rights movement then and now, and I have 5 steps. 5 steps to eradicating racism and to end the Emmet Till continuum. 5 steps. You know what they are? I talked about it to some degree in a blog that I did for George Mason University. They asked me to do a blog for them in 2016. And in that, I talked about some of the same things I've been talking about since the 90s. After my book was published in 1994, it starts off with this. We are all human beings and we make mistakes.
Yeah.
The dominant culture has made some grave mistakes that are embarrassing. If I were white, I would be embarrassed. And some of them are, in fact, embarrassed, as well they should be. But what they have to do, 5 steps. You got to first acknowledge the crime. I've done that. I've enslaved the people. I've cheated them. I've gotten free labor for centuries. I've deprived them of generational wealth. We can never pay them back
And continue
for
to.
all they've done. Pardon me? We can never pay them
I said,
back.
and continue to.
Yeah, but we need to do something to do. I'm sorry is not enough. Okay, I don't want to hear I'm sorry. You can be I'm sorry as the first gesture, but then there has to be something that follows I'm sorry. There has to be a tone. I call it what we call it. There has to be remorse. You have to really be sorry, and if you're really sorry, you're going to want to atone. That's number 3. You're going to want to do something to compensate for what they lost. Reparation is one form of atonement. Like one guy said, we should never have to pay taxes. We have robbed generations on generations on generations of our kids from their wealth. We have no generational wealth.
None.
We should never have to pay taxes because we've spent over 400 years of slavery and still have 21st century slavery. Excuse me. We don't need that. Somebody need, and they're beginning to, you need to atone. You need to pay back. And from that, God will give you redemption, not me. I can't redeem you. You get redemption for doing good.
Mm-hmm.
And from that doing good and redemption, then we as a people, at last getting some of what we deserve, can say, okay, I can forgive you, but not before. Not before.
Mm-hmm.
You can't keep rubbing salt in our wounds and think I'm going to forgive you. I know we're supposed to forgive, but it's hard. We are human beings. And if you keep hurting me, I'm mad. I haven't got time to forgive you. I'm too busy trying to survive this that you're doing to me. We have to try to change this world because, love it or not, we're all in it together. We're here. We're here, and we got to do something about it. Too many people think that I'm just not going to talk about this race thing because that's why African Americans, they love to talk about race. And I'm going to talk about racism as long as it exists. I have no intentions of avoiding that white elephant in this room. I'm going to talk about it. And we need to make other people talk about it candidly and come up with some possible solutions. That's what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually inviting everybody to be a part of carrying out those things that we need to carry out to bring this thing to full fruition.
Mm-hmm.
It's time. It's past time. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it. How much longer can this stuff go?
Right.
Please, we got to stop this.
Yeah, we
One
here
lady
for
said,
it.
"Oh, now we see it. We understand it now." Excuse me. Are you supposed to be intelligent? You read and you don't know? You haven't heard of the word slavery? Let me tell you one thing. What slavery entailed far exceeded what's happening today. That doesn't make me happy. There's a hell of a lot of stuff going on today. including the series of Black deaths. You know, I call them Emmet Till continuums. I've been calling that for 2.5 decades.
Samir Rice.
We need to stop it. So I'm saying that if we don't force people and look at them and say what you're doing is wrong, and let them know, no, don't pretend that you just got it. You always got it. Right. You had to have known it. Right. What you didn't want to do was to acknowledge the fact that you're too selfish and you would rather stay a benefactor of white privilege.
Well,
white privilege is bad for you, even though ostensibly it's great. So you've been getting a whole lot of benefit from white privilege. But what it does is makes you very lazy, because you don't have to use your brain cells.
Pathologically lazy,
all you have to be is white. You ain't got to use your brain cells. That makes you lazy. It gives you no incentive for using your brain cells. We do it because we got to constantly create to get out of this stuff. And so we do all this stuff, and then you take it, and then you become the person who gets all the money for it, and you're the founder, and you're the discoverer, and you're all that stuff, and you never give us credit. Nobody wants to give me credit for being the definitive Emmet Till scholar. Instead, you got other than me being scholars in the Emmet Till scholar, when you know perfectly well.
Well, I think
and all you got to do is to go back
because of your politics.
Listen, I spoke at an opening plenary in 1987 before I got.
If your research had to blame the victim, if your research had to blame Emmet Till for his death, you would be the most prominent Black woman.
Oh yeah, she, of course, but no. I said he whistled, but didn't give them the right to kill him. Stop doing that and thinking that that's justification. He whistled, he disrespected her. He even pulled up, and then the lie came up later. Okay, but what I'm saying is,
14-year-old child.
Anytime you got a person who did a PhD, almost 400 pages of Emmet Till, and there was no joke. My committee was solid as anything could ever get. It was no joke. I wrote a dissertation for the University of Iowa, where I got my PhD. You know, that's a Research One university, and you're gonna tell me that didn't count? Then I was a national Ford fellow, and I was the only Ford fellow in the state of Iowa. That didn't count.
Well, you understand that it counts.
I was solid enough to do the
of your politics. You know that's a representation of who you are.
I was solid enough to be the first time they ever had a pre-doc to do a plenary. Plenaries are reserved for postdocs. I did a plenary the same day, opening plenary, the same day that Condoleezza Rice did the afternoon plenary, and Dr. John Hope Franklin did the closing plenary. You tell me that wasn't good company, and you tell me that wasn't important. Emmet Till, the impetus of the civil rights movement, is what I laid out.
I think everybody who's listening needs to go read it.
And now all of a sudden, I don't exist. You go everywhere else to get your experts and say, I don't know, just on TV. How did you do it? Yeah, well, it's simple. They got my book and did it.
Right.
Yeah. And didn't cite you.
Story, historically.
No, they're not gonna cite me. You know, you got Stanley Nelson up there. He tracked me down, and he did the documentary. And I thought it was a great idea. You know, I said, yeah, why not? You know, a documentary is not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do a silver screener, you know. So yeah, documentary, that's fine. It kind of paves the way. He got my book, all that stuff. He wanted another copy. I gave him that. But then he turned around and says, I said, when are you going to interview me? I'm just interviewing the primary sources. I said, can you please tell me how much more primary can it be when you are in fact the one who resurrected Emmet and established Emmet, the first to establish him as the true catalyst of the civil rights movement. And I'm not important. I'm not a significant part of this. Oh, I can help you get promotion at your university. I've done it for people, to get you promotion. I said, sir, when you saw the back of my book, did it say I was an instructor? Did it say I was an assistant professor? Did I say I was an associate professor? I am a full professor. You can't help me in the academy. I'm at the top of the heap with rank. Okay, you need to stop taking my work and claiming it as yours, because this is not what you did. And I'm supposed to be as an afterthought. If you look at the credits, I'm a consultant. Consultancy.
So is that? That may be what Dr. Tyreen Wright talking about. He's taking your work from a Black woman.
I never got a nickel from him. And then you got Beauchamp. That young guy was 14 when I was marching with a PhD. And he went and got under Mamie, and they became friends and all that. Now he's the expert. Boy, you ain't no expert to me, and you already know it. I talked to you and told you about this on Democracy Now! If you're hearing this several years ago. You're not the expert. And everything you saying indirectly comes from my interpretation, and you know it.
Okay, with all due respect, I'm going to interrupt because we're talking about Africana womanism, and I know we all have families. And my family says
yes,
it's 15 minutes to the new year, and I'm not going to be.
And y'all got to ring it in.
That's right. I'm 10:45. That's right. You guys are Eastern. You're right. You're right, sweetie. Well, listen, it's been great. It's been great. I love you.
And it's over for me.
It's got to be over for all of us, okay?
But it's a pleasure.
Well, we love you too. This has been a pleasure. I appreciate both of you for coming. We're certainly going to have a follow-up. The comments were all the way live, vast majority of the time, and we still have the majority of the people.
We don't get to see the comments.
I don't know why you couldn't see them, but they're up on the screen. I put them there. Some of them are up on the screen. But anyway, this has been great. I would love to have you, Dr. Wright, back. I would love to have you as well, Dr. Hudson-Weems. And so this has been wonderful. I appreciate you all for staying with us this long.
And I didn't mean to get off on the other side of the coin. We need to stay on Africana womanism, but that's okay. We got a chance to do that too. Okay.
Yeah, no, this
got off and on.
So that's it.
On, so it's good.
That's right.
Bye bye.
That's right. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you.